But one of the best things about playing Holy Priest is that you have the ability to play Discipline Priest if you want to.
Hey guys, surprise rare intro. I think the content today is pretty good, but I know a lot of people are going to fixate on the tier list part of it. Tier lists are memes. They are almost never accurate, even when people do them seriously, and this is by default a meme tier list. It's a bunch of people all ranking their things individually against each other with different ideas of what S tier and F tier mean and things like that. So do not take this list seriously whatsoever, and even if it was completely accurate, it would be outdated instantly, and it's not accurate. So please just pay attention to the tier list. What I really love about today is I got a group of people that really know what they're talking about with these classes, and they're giving you an idea of where the class came from, where it's at now, what it was good at and bad at then, what got addressed in the talent system for people who are just coming back, and just a kind of general overview of all the classes in the game. And then at the end, they're all just going to give their random rank on a tier list of where they would put their class. Do not put that much weight in that. The content is what they're saying about the class. All right, so I hope you guys enjoy it. And a quick shout out, we'll be streaming all of the Dragonflight launch. They are doing a few drops and things like that. You can like gift 2 subs in my channel or any WoW channel. You will get like an Ichabod pet. Hopefully I pronounced that right. And then also there will be some other Feldrake drop at the same time. So hope to see you guys there. And then we have a word today from our sponsor. Hey guys, Team Liquid's partner Displate is having a huge Black Friday sale. A lot of you guys are already aware what a Displate is, but it's basically like a cool metal poster you can put on your wall. You guys can see I have some behind me up there. And it's really easy to set up. All you do is you place the leaf on the wall, stick the magnet to the leaf, and then your display will be attached magnetically to the wall. And I do, again, have a few behind me, but I'm actually going to hang a new one that I have. Have a cool Lich King display that I'm going to put over to the left. And I'm going to set it up right now, just so you can see how easy it is to set it up. And just like that, we're done. So make sure you guys check them out. The deal's on the screen, the link's in the description, and go get some displays. All right, okay. So the idea today is I'm just going to pull up a tier list maker, and I'm not going to rank anything, but I'm going to call people from the community, in which if you guys, okay, actually praise me real quick. I actually reached out to and confirmed with every single class and spec in the game to be here today, instead of just turning my stream on and just hoping they're here. Let's go! I actually did that. So I will have a representative from each class and spec in the entire game to, per spec, do about 5 to 10 minutes, very brief, what they like about the spec in Dragonflight that's changed, what they don't like, stuff they'd like to see changed, and then a general outlook for the spec going into Season 1 in PvE, and then an idea on their opinion of their general thought of the power level of the class. And then I'm going to put that power level on a tier list. Keep in mind, obviously, all tier lists are memes. Hopefully you should know that. And if it isn't of any other indication, there's not one single person ranking everything. Each individual person is doing their own rank, and everyone has a different idea of what is S and A and B and D and stuff. So it's going to be fucking all over the place, but you know, that's fun meme content, right? So just a little disclaimer. None of my raiders or any other raider in a top team who obviously puts in an insane amount of fucking effort to find out exactly what classes are good and why. It makes no sense for them to be on something like this, because you're never leaking that information, because it's all in the sake of competition. So I'm not putting any of my raiders in that position. I'm not putting any raiders from any other top 5 team in that position. That's private information that you make sense to get. It makes no sense to put them in this situation to either lie about what they know or don't know about, and then they can't be truthful about it. So it makes no sense. But all these people are very involved in their current spec that they play. They will have great takes. It's just that those people can't be really in that position. That includes me, by the way. I will be giving you absolutely zero information about what I think about these classes. All right. Time to call this shit up. Let me tell you guys who I'm talking to today from each class, okay? So all tanks, the one and only Dorki, not Droki. He is a good take factory, and he has been playing all the tanks excessively in Beta Mythic Plus. And as opposed to other roles like healers and DPS, where their role in a Mythic Plus and raid environment is extremely different, tanking in Mythic Plus is actually one of the best places to like limit test a tank, to like get a feel for how tanky they are, get a feel for, you know, the gameplay and how much damage they do. It's actually the best testing ground, and that's what he's been able to play the most. Usually the best takes you're going to get coming out of beta are going to be from tanks, because they've actually put themselves in that scenario where, you know, typically in raiding environments, you only get your short bit of testing in raid testing and stuff, and healing in like raids versus Mythic Plus is totally incomparable. and healing and DPSing in raids and Mythic Plus is really, really hard to figure out, right? Because like in raids, you're running a different build than you're running in Mythic Plus. Even though you're looking at your single target on boss in Mythic Plus, you're usually playing a different build unless you're intentionally playing a single target build. You know, all that stuff. For all healers, we'll probably do this in order just to get the healers and tanks out of the way, right? We are going to do Growl, aka Yummy TV, aka Grom, aka Pete, aka Prodigy. Except specifically Mistweaver will be Megasett. All right. Now, for every other class in the game, DPS DK, I'll be talking to Taeznak. Hunter, I'll be talking to Azortharion. For Mage, I'll be talking to Xyronic. Rogue, I'll be playing or talking to 3 different rogues. I'll be talking to Whispyr for Assassination, Foreverguy, who is a outlaw, Fu for sub, and if Fu needs to go, we have a backup in Push Noir for Rogue. So those 3 people, I'll just type them out. Okay, so Warlock, Kalamazi, DPS Shaman. I reached out to Wordup, who by the way is I think getting out of his thing soon and he's doing better. I've been talking to him last night, and he set me up with someone named Surge. Surge might not be able to be here till later, and if he's not here, he wrote me up a write-up for Enhance that I will go over for him. And he already answered this via text because he couldn't be here. So we have DPS Shaman, we have Surge. I actually don't have an Ellie right now. I might need to figure that out. The only Ellies I know of, Childrill is perfect for this, but he's in my guild and I can't do that. There's good Ellies in all the other top guilds. I don't know many other... If you guys know an Ellie person that's like a Theory Crafter dude that would like to speak on Ellie that is not in a top guild and wants to reach out to me, just do that in my like Discord DMs. Monk, Babylonius, DH, I got Jedith or Jereico. What the fuck is his name? I'm sorry. I literally watched his YouTube video last night. It's Jedith, I'm pretty sure. I don't know why I'm thinking Jereico. Jereico's someone else, right? I don't fucking know. It's Jedith. Okay, whatever. Oh, he's the Evoker guy. Okay, got it. Yeah, Evoker. Yeah. Okay, I got Jereico. We're good. Oh, Shadow Priest. Publik. You all know Publik. Balance. I have Naguura. Feral. I have Psy. Warrior. I have Critcake. And Ret. I have Bolas. This is a pretty stacked list. These people are good and know what they're talking about. All right, I'm gonna call Growl. Hello, bud. Dude, wait, do you remember that one time we were dragon riding?
I don't think so.
You don't remember that?
No.
Okay. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah. This happened a long time ago. So take it away.
Yeah, right on. I think we'll start with the healer that everyone wants to hear about, Evoker. I've actually been playing a lot of Preservation. It's something that took me a little bit to sort of figure everything out, but the more I play it, the more fun I have. I would say the biggest thing that I want to say about Evoker is you play it and doesn't it make you type like advanced class when you make the guy or whatever? I would actually say that Preservation Evoker is pretty simple design and honestly pretty good for someone who's not like, you know, if you're a beginner healer, you can definitely pick up Preservation and it doesn't really feel that crazy. Its big sticking point is the 30-yard range. It's a little bit shorter than most healers, but I would say most of the time, let's say like 90 to 95% of the time, you don't really feel it too much, and it feels actually pretty good.
I mean, the Evoker is going to be one of the shorter ones to talk about in general because Evoker is, you know, you don't have to talk about where it came from and what has changed,
right?
Because it's just brand new, right? And and you also can't talk about their talent tree because their talent tree isn't like a change from before. It's like kind of it's symbiotic with the class. They're the same thing. They happened at the same time. It's hard to separate the two. So general opinion of Evoker is, yeah, and I will throw in too, just on the topic of both Evokers, not about their power level or anything, just that I feel much like I feel like with Fated affixes in Season 4 and kind of Mythic Plus affixes in general, where it's kind of there and doesn't really maybe negatively affect it or positively affect it, it just kind of exists. That's the kind of same thing I feel about Preservation, or just the 30, 25-yard range bit. I just think it's an experiment they're doing. I don't know if they'll ever go back on it. It just doesn't feel like it really feels great in any way. But it also doesn't really feel horrible in a lot of situations. It just kind of seems like it's there. I'm not super down with it being in there, but it's also like not the end of the world. So
yeah, I think it's a less impact than people would think. So yeah, there's not much changing. I would say for people who have played WoW for a long time, if I had to compare it to any healer, I would say it's similar to Resto Shaman in a way, where you're mostly a reactive healer, a little bit of proactive stuff. You definitely strive on stacked sort of group healing, everybody sitting together, just channeling like really big, long heals. and just blasting on everybody. In terms of power level, I would say this healer really feels like it's made for 5-mans. I've been really loving playing it in dungeons. The problem I think you may run into for raids is that, number one, it doesn't quite feel like it brings enough in terms of like what its raid buff is not super good, and also it's kind of like whatever, like you can kind of, it's not like irreplaceable. Like you need to sort of have a disc priest in a raid, you need to sort of have a holy paladin. It doesn't really feel like you need to have a preservation, and on top of that there's probably going to be a lot of people that want to play this class, so you may struggle a little bit with raid spots. I would probably say like it's really, really good in 5-mans, and I think it'll still be fine in raids. I would put it somewhere like low A, high B sort of situation.
Okay, I'm just gonna go from what you're saying now. I'm just gonna go ahead and put it in A, but when we start ranking other things, I'll remember that it's more lower A. Yeah, good. All right, next healer. We gotta
we'll go Resto Druid.
Sure.
Resto Druid, I was a little worried at first, so not a lot has changed with Resto Druid. They kept almost like everything that was going on with it in Shadowlands, in terms of they kept a lot of the legendaries, they kept 2 of the Covenant abilities, they kept some stuff from BFA as well. It's a lot of the same stuff that you'd expect from Resto Druid. However, they also got even more stuff. They got a lot of really strong passives. Their healing output, at least from what I know, is very, very strong. They work very, very well in 5-mans. They work very, very well in raids. They have a really nice utility kit. I'm kind of how Meg is Copium over Mistweaver. I'm always Copium over Resto Druid. I feel like Resto Druid probably gonna be really good in like all forms of PvE. I guess I don't know what I would put in S tier, but I feel like I'm really on Resto Druid. I've been really enjoying the class. I think it's really fun.
Okay.
It's one of the most fun caster healers. I think you can find a place like everywhere. I almost want to put it in S tier. I love Resto Druid.
As this is like not like a super regimented, like this is absolutely accurate thing, the tier list part of it, I do think the tier list does also need to kind of factor in fun as well. Then you're saying that like you think the class is actually just like designed straight up better than it was in Shadowlands.
Well, I think like it's all around, right? So I think it kept all the cool things that it had. It like everyone liked Convoke, or a lot of people like Convoke. Adaptive Swarm, really good in 5-mans. It kept some of the good raid stuff. It went from not having a party buff to having literally the best party buff you can bring. And also you have Stampeding Roar and a talent that can make it a 1-minute cooldown, which is crazy utility for raids, crazy for 5-man speed. I just feel like Resto Druid is just powerful, does good damage, brings lots of good stuff. There's not a lot to say bad about Resto Druid right now.
And huge shout out to Blizzard design-wise for bringing back Nature's Vigil. It has uses for other specs, but specifically for Resto, I just feel like such an issue they've had in the past is solving DPS while healing, and I feel like that is perfect for it. Not only does it fit so well with their kit, but it also is kind of like a little tiny burst window as well. It's like not all the time. Like you could stack it like at certain parts of the fight or something and get more value out of it. Really, really cool addition for sure to that. All right, so you're saying
yeah,
S.
Vigil is great.
I have zero opinion on tier list. You can place it wherever you want.
Yeah, let's throw it in S. The one disclaimer that I'll give to it is that Resto Druid is all based on heal over time stuff, right? So I would rate the difficulty a little bit higher on average than other healers. You sort of have to know what's going on with the mechanics to make good use of your healing. If you're sort of like waiting for damage to happen and then pressing buttons, you're probably gonna underperform compared to somebody who's just like playing a more reactive healer. So I would say it takes a little bit more experience to get the best benefit out of like what you're doing as a Resto Druid, but it's not like super complicated. So once you get the hang of what's going on, it's really, really strong.
Excellent. All right, moving on.
Okay, let's do Holy Paladin. So Holy Paladin, I would say, is very similar to Druid in the sense that it is not really changed that much from Shadowlands. You kept a lot of the same powers that you have. You kept Divine Toll, which is like mostly what Paladins wanted. You have almost all the same kits in terms of all the talents that you have. There wasn't really that much new for Paladin. Unfortunately, unlike Druid, I would say, Paladin, instead of getting all these new like strong passives, their sort of addition was you can play ranged caster Paladin now, or some sort of hybrid. Some people like that. If you are an old school Paladin guy, you're happy that Paladin is, you can play this caster play style again. Personally, I don't really enjoy that so much, and I think that there's a lot of talent points that are like sort of wasted for me in that sense. In terms of power level, I think you bring a lot of really crazy stuff. For raids, you have like some more invaluable stuff like Devotion Aura, Blessing of Freedom, Blessing of Protection. Also for Mythic Plus, all that stuff is good too. I would say in terms of output, like your damage and healing, it's probably going to be less than that of Druid and Evoker, but you're also bringing more like utility stuff and bringing other like just cool, like Paladin is basically like you bring everything cool, you negate mechanics, you have an immunity, you have all this stuff. I'd probably, if I had to give it a power level, I'd probably put it somewhere near Evoker, maybe like behind Evoker, like right next to it, like high B, low A.
High B, low A. Oh, you have to choose.
Let's be on the copium. Let's put stuff high. Let's put it in the A tier. I think
believe
Paladin's
that.
really
Okay.
fun too.
Yeah.
I don't mean to be a downer when I say that Paladin's like, oh, it's the same as Shadowlands, because I enjoyed Shadowlands Paladin. I thought it's good. You know, if you played Shadowlands Paladin, you're like, yeah, I'm kind of sick of this. You might be disappointed that you don't have lots of new stuff. But I personally find that playstyle fun. Say it's sort of the same with Druid.
Very good. Dude, I was going to do a bit and I chickened out because I just don't want to get the heat that comes with it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh, wait. That I can relate to that.
Like what I was going to do is create 2 Holy Paladins, and then I was going to let you talk about just like regular Holy Paladin like the whole time. And then I was just going to say, oh yeah, and then casting Holy Paladin, and then I would give 0 context or thoughts about it whatsoever, put it in Swamp Ass tier, and then just move to the next healer and not say anything. But with no information, like that's not accurate or like I'm not being truthful, but just to like incite chaos.
Yeah, that's definitely would incite chaos.
Yeah, and I feel like that's a bad idea.
Chaos.
That's a bad idea. Okay, so next class, high B for. Okay, so far healer's looking pretty fucking solid.
Yeah, I'm happy with a lot of the healer stuff. Okay, let's go Disc Priest next.
Okay.
So Disc Priest is always been in a weird spot in 5-man. It is like traditionally a raid healer in that you put atonements out. They're a buff that you put on people. The more people that you have that you can put them on, all of the damage that you do goes on to them as healing. So it's traditionally like, okay, in a 20-man setting, it's great because you can put atonements on all 20 of those people. It's amazing. In a 5-man, it's usually not that good, and you struggle to keep up. And Blizzard has always kind of struggled with balance in that sense, in that they usually are good in raid, bad in 5-man. They redesigned a lot of the way that Disc Priest plays in 5-man in the sense that it does more damage. More of its healing is relegated towards penance and not towards just like single target healing, so you can actually do damage. And I was really, really hopium on Disc Priest for a long time. Then they sort of came out with this weird change where they nerfed the healing of everything by 40%. And in raid, it's still probably fine for Disc Priest. If anything, it's maybe a buff to them. In Mythic Plus, I've really struggled to keep up in like high level content with Disc Priest. And I feel like Disc Priest just doesn't do the healing in dungeons compared to like the other 3 healers that we've ranked so far. And so now I'm kind of a Dobby on Disc Priest.
Well, you're Dobby on Disc Priest, but also this is all PvE, so raid is included as well, which you spoke up on them in raid.
Of course. So another change that they made, so a big talent I think is going to be Harsh Discipline. It basically like giga juices your penance. And previously they made it so it would trigger off of all atonement healing, which was like a dungeon thing because, you know, you're healing a lot, you get those procs. In raids, now it's every 5 smites. Well, it's every 5 smites and everything. So in raid, it makes it a lot easier to stack up and like use it exactly when you want to on time for your ramp. But in Mythic Plus, it's a lot harder because if you're in trouble, you're not just spamming smite all the time. So you're getting way less of these procs in Mythic Plus, which is unfortunate. However, I still think Disc Priest is really fun. I still like the changes that they made. I still think it's going to be really good in raid.
Okay.
We're on the copium. I don't know, let's just put it in A behind Holy Paladin.
All right, let's do it. I mean, dude, this is a positivity stream. Let's fucking go.
Let's be honest. This is a PvE tier list. Lots of people like to raid. If you're a Disc Priest, you raid. Disc Priest is going to be good in raid. I almost guarantee it. So
there's always muddy waters when you're ranking things for all PvE, but I mean, we're not just going to do 2 of these things, one for Mythic Plus, one for raid, especially because it's not super. I see a lot of people in chat already taking it very seriously. Everything he just said about Disc before he gave it a ranking was the important part. This part is more of like the meme, but I know people will take it seriously. It is for all things, so it's not just for Mythic Plus, but also for raid. Disc is always obviously historically a very solid raid healer. So all right, low wave, that's good. Moving on.
All right, chat wants blood. Let's put the Resto Shaman on the board. Resto Shaman, it was like such a staple raid healer for a long time, and then pretty much all of Shadowlands, you just never played it. You played it in a little bit in Nathri, I think, and then it completely fell off. Now we're seeing every single class, like, or not every single one, but a lot more classes, like for instance, Druid are bringing these class buffs. Shaman, for some reason, still doesn't have a buff, so they're starting to get forced out there. Also, I feel like Resto Druid is just such a good HPS healer that we're probably going to see either like a Resto Druid or a Mistweaver in every raid. On top of that, a Holy Paladin in every raid, a Disc Priest in every raid. And so Resto Shaman is just going to be fighting for that spot. And when you don't have a party buff or a raid buff, I feel like it's going to be difficult. In 5-mans, it's also been struggling a little bit. Its damage was bad. It's been getting buffed. The problem with Shaman is it just doesn't do damage as a part of any of its healing kit for dungeons. Like Disc Priest, Paladin is all doing that passive damage. Druid has Nature's Vigil, like you mentioned now. Shaman is just like, you know, you have to just like hard cast Chain Lightning. You don't have any way to like blast AoE. Is that important? No, but it kind of feels bad when you pull 100 mobs and you're doing nothing. I think Shaman got hurt actually from the talent trees. It sounds silly, but Shaman has all this like really weird small utility. Like it was almost like the toolkit kind of like you have all these different things for all these different situations. The problem is like, well, is it worth it to waste my talent points in this one thing that I'm going to use one time in one part of the dungeon? Or like, so now it almost is like, well, you don't even have Hex, like you don't even have Tremor Totem. You're not even taking these Shaman abilities that normally you have. That the thing is, you still have them, right? Like if there's a fight that has a fear and you want to have Tremor, you can bring it. So it's not totally downer, like it's not like you lose it, but yeah, it kind of feels bad for those niche situations.
I think when Shaman's talent tree first came out, the thought was, wow, this is amazing. There's so many.
It was amazing, right?
Yeah, there's so many. Because, like, the whole idea of the general talent trees for any class is, like, yes, you have to spec into a lot of stuff you had before, but what it does is allow you to unspec out of things when you don't need them to gain power in other areas, to, like, customize your character more for everything you're doing. And for almost every class in the game, that's exactly what it does. For Shaman, they're just a class that just has, I don't know, somewhere between, like, 5 or 6 more buttons like that than, like, the next class. I'm not kidding. That's not exaggeration. Like, than the next class in the game. So because of that, you end up spending more of the time on their general tree going for things you already had, and you don't feel that power by unselecting things. There's just so many things to select. You have anxiety about making sure you have everything you have. So I've definitely noticed that as well, even though it is one of the better trees in general.
Yeah, well, and that can be attributed to a numbers game too. Like, for example, let's say you rip all your utility out as a shaman and you're taking all these passives. You don't generally, you're not like sitting there, oh man, I'm so strong now. Like, I have all these things. Like, even with all the passives and all the buffs you get, like, you're still not even like stronger than some of the other better healers who are taking all their utility stuff anyway, you know? Like, I think maybe if those nodes were more impactful, but it kind of feels like you're debating between like a utility that you're probably never going to use and then like something that gives you like 1%, you know, 2% avoidance or something. Just like, you know, like neither one of these really feels good to press. So, but this is the Copium tier list. And I do think that every healer, you know, can exist and do well if you play well and understand your class. So I think even, Shaman sucks. Put it in the C tier.
Oh, that delivery was excellent. Holy shit. Okay. Moving on to Holy Priest.
All right. We got the Dobby out of the way so we can be a little more positive.
Dobby is fine if it's real.
Holy Priest is kind of an interesting thing. Now, this is something that a lot of people might disagree with me with. This isn't a knock at Holy Priest, but one of the best things about playing Holy Priest is that you have the ability to play Discipline Priest if you want to. And I know a lot of people are going to be mad about that, but that's like the cool thing about Priest is that you have two, it's the only healer that you can play where you have access to 2 specs based off the situation. And so if you're I'm only going to play Holy Priest guy, or I'm only going to play Disc Priest guy, then yeah, you know, it may sound bad, but I honestly think it's like kind of cool that you can switch between the two and you have those play styles. It's hard because right now in Shadowlands Season 4, Holy Priest is like so busted. It's doing so much damage. It's doing so much raid healing. We were seeing raid stack like 3 of these. I feel like it's lost a lot of its power. You're losing flash concentration, which wasn't fun. I feel like Holy Priest is definitely more fun in Dragonflight than it is in Shadowlands, but it also lost a lot of its power. One of the big things that Holy Priest had going for it into Dragonflight was it had this like side of its spec tree that had all these damage nodes where you could like get a buff that would increase the damage of everything you do, and then you had this ability to stack Holy Fire multiple times on the same target. And it was like, damn, like Holy Priest has this ability to do all this damage, which doesn't really fit with the class, but it was cool and powerful. And then they gutted it into the ground. And so then now I feel like Holy Priest kind of doesn't really have a place. It's almost just like, well, if this is a fight or a dungeon where Disc Priest is bad, then you can play Holy. I could be off base by this, but I've just felt like Holy Priest just seems like a weaker version of Druid or Mistweaver in terms in raid content and Mythic Plus. That being said, like it still does the job. Holy Priest is also like a really good. It's easy to pick up. All of its heals are very straightforward. Like if you're someone who doesn't necessarily know what's going on in the dungeon and you just want to like push the health bars up and keep people alive, Holy Priest is great for that. And I think also in raid, it's very straightforward. So it's not as bad as Shaman. I'd probably put it B tier, let's say. Okay. Not quite on that level.
B, and then one other thing about Holy that I think is cool is that they gave their like single target damage rotation a bit of some love in this expansion, right? Like the ability to do damage as a Holy Priest is on demand. Well,
yeah, the problem with that is I don't think Holy Priests really care. I personally, as someone who enjoys all the healers, think it's really cool. If you play Holy Priest and you're like a Holy Priest one trick though, I don't know how much, you know what I mean? Like, it's kind of a weird spot for them to give love. But I do agree with you that it's actually pretty, like, so Divine Word is basically a spell that you, every 1 minute you use it, and then you can buff the next, like, powerful Holy Word spell you use, and then it also gives you a buff depending on what you press. And it's actually pretty cool because you can kind of decide, like, do I want single target healing? Do I want AoE? Do I want damage? And it actually creates this kind of interesting, like, choice that comes up every 1 minute of, like, what do I need right now in this situation? So that's, I think that it's definitely cool and interesting. I think they definitely added depth to the class for sure.
All right. We are now moving to Mistweaver. I am going to add Megasett to the call. Okay, new call should be able to join. I'm going to put her on the screen real quick. 1 second, Megasett. Let me get your name on here. Actually, I had Growl up for long enough. I'm going to... what is your Twitch? Is it Megasett, just your exact name?
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay, so Megasett, I'll give you the floor. Growl, you can jump in whenever you'd like. And then Megasett will have
I'll keep her in line.
Yeah. Okay. All right, Megasett, go ahead.
So I want to start out kind of like with the strengths that we have. RJW is no longer our primary choice in raid, which is awesome. Big fan of that change. So it changes our spot healing a bit in raid. We still have things like Renewing Mist and Ancient Teachings, and then the new addition of the Instant Vivifies. It just looks a little bit different than it does in Shadowlands. Generally, we will have bigger cooldown windows during Celestial, rather than like the constant throughput that we would have from Essence Font, RJW, and Fallen Order. So that is just a bit of a change, but we still do have really high throughput.
Okay.
When it comes to the damage part of raid, Rising Sun Kick recently got a 22% buff, and Tiger Palm, while standing in Phaeline, now hits twice instead of cleaving. So our single target healing through Ancient Teachings is a little bit stronger in raid, in addition to the single target DPS. But we did get a 20% Blackout Kick nerf and a 12% buff to single target damage is kind of how that balances out. So it's a decent nerf to cleave. For things like Council, we were doing like 20k DPS, so that was an appropriate change. So things just kind of shifted around a little bit. And then Chi-Ji is our main cooldown. Revival is better in raid than it is in Mythic Plus, but it's still not fabulous. But Chi-Ji is where a lot of our throughput comes in raid, and that is our Celestial window. So it's super easy on our
one more thing too.
Yeah.
You mentioned Revival. I just wanted to admit for the people who are coming back and haven't played in a while, if you guys have ever been in a raid fight where like a Mistweaver wanted a Revival for HPS, you would like dispel shit and it would all be terrible. Now they gave you an option this expansion to, it's like a choice node to, it's a ridiculously funny name, Restoral. But yeah, you can actually talent out of the dispel portion of Revival if you're on a fight where that can affect you negatively, which is cool.
I think that that's also something that they've been taking in PvP, because you can use it while stunned if you take Restoral. So that's just like a nice little thing for them as well.
Cool.
But yeah, Chi-Ji is super easy on our mana pool. It requires minimal spending of mana during the actual cooldown, and it only takes like 5% to trigger. I do have a couple of concerns with like our aura buffs. Generous, Poor, and Close to Heart aren't implemented properly, which is the avoidance and the healing auras.
Oh yeah, they're still bugs.
They haven't been working. Yeah.
Well,
so
they are working,
kind of
right? It's just that like the avoidance one is 4% of your current avoidance, so it's like literally worthless instead of 4% flat. Yeah,
that's the problem that we've been having a lot. And then Close to Heart has been kind of working on and off.
Cool. Say just like general, what are your thoughts, not as much about like the X's and O's of it, but just like what are your thoughts on the general play style of Mistweaver from last expansion to this expansion? Good, bad, stuff you like?
This is the most fun version of Monk that I've ever personally played.
Awesome.
Shadowlands Mistweaver, like, part of it was fun, like in Sanctum or like in Sepulchre, because you had big numbers, but it wasn't really like a fun playstyle. It was just seeing the performance was nice. But now with Phaeline and all of that stuff, it's gotten a lot better, and it feels less like passive and AFK brains off during farm type thing. So really happy with how that's changed.
Awesome. So in general, what would you say about the general power level you think about Mistweaver in Season 1 of PvE? And then Growl can comment on that as well.
For keys specifically, I'd say we're around like high B or low A, but because of raid, we are competitive with Rested Druid in terms of throughput. So overall, I would put us in like mid-tier A.
Mid-tier A, okay. You have to choose if it's above or below Holy Paladin. It's up to you.
Probably above or I don't know.
Okay,
Hard to
Growl,
say.
Growl, what do you think? Growl, what do you think?
Sorry, I was just analyzing the placement. I want to second what you said about how fun the rotation is. They made so many solid improvements to Mistweaver, and I haven't been able to play it in raids, but in dungeons it feels really, really smooth. Previously, I would say that if you wanted to play a melee healer, just play Paladin, it's more fun. But now with the way that they've handled Mistweaver, they've added so much to the kit, and then they've also like enhanced the abilities that were already part of the rotation. Like Meg mentioned, Feline Stomp is a big part of it, where you basically put this thing on the ground, and then whenever you stand in it, all your stuff is like buffed. And so you kind of like have that, and then you can use your Celestial, which will buff your stuff even more. And it just sort of feels like you're constantly just like karate chopping your entire rotation. It's really fast paced, but it's not super difficult or complex. And yeah, overall, I really enjoy. I might argue with the strength of Mistweaver. I guess we're gonna have to wait and see what guilds play. The one issue that I have with Mistweaver, I think, is it brings less than a lot of the healers around it. Like, for example, even if it's doing a little more healing than Druid, I feel like Druid brings more, and classes like Holy Paladin bring more. Like, I think Mistweaver is definitely going to out-heal probably everything else in the A tier, but it brings a lot less in terms of, like,
yeah,
unless you really need that
it
Mystic
does
Touch
and
buff,
it doesn't.
then,
It's
yeah.
like, it does and it doesn't, right? Because it brings, like, in total, like, you could technically bring these with other monks, too, so it's hard to, but that's true of any other thing when you're talking about raid buffs, is like a monk brings 8% increased healing taken, 4% avoidance, and 5% increased physical damage taken, which is like, all those things are solid if they work. Just right now, 2 of them just don't, right? So that's a thing that hopefully Blizzard knows.
Yeah. One thing, because I just put out a Mistweaver video for Meg. What are your thoughts on mana, both in raid and M+?
Mana, I haven't had any problems with in raid. It's definitely a little bit more taxing in Mythic Plus. But if you're using your Celestial well, and if you have people that are, you know, getting kicks and people that have maybe seen the dungeons a couple of times, it improves significantly. I think a lot of this right now is just people are making mistakes, not getting kicks, getting hit by things, and haven't seen it enough to know where to use their cooldowns and their defensives. But I think that'll get better with time.
All right. That is great. I think that's basically it. Do you guys have any final notes about healers before I move on to Dorki?
I did have a question about Monk in general.
Sure.
Do Windwalkers route to close to heart on like the left side of the class tree?
They go and get Chi Wave and Chi Burst usually, so it's just 2 or 3 points away to get that. I'm just gonna go ahead and say, if you needed to get this, you absolutely would, right? Like, I mean, if this is working properly and it makes anyone who's stacked take 8% increase in healing, you could absolutely not lose throughput on the tree to go get it, or it'd be very minimal. But yeah, you could definitely grab both. Yeah. Okay, that's it. Thank you guys for that. Huge shout. And again, you guys can go follow them on twitch.tv/yummytv or Megasett. And then obviously they probably have their Twitter links and stuff on there. And they can put them in the chat if they'd like. Thank you guys very much. Got the healers out of the way. Thank you.
Yeah, right on. Thanks for having us.
Yep, see ya. All right, Colin Dorki. Hello,
Yo.
Mr. Dorki. How are you doing?
I'm doing great.
Wait, did you just wake up?
Nah, definitely not.
Are you sure? You sound super bird. 1 second.
No.
Okay.
This just took a little nap. Yeah, so we can start with Bloody K, I guess.
Sure.
Absolutely S tier. This is a banger tank. I don't think it's as good in M+. I do think it's like, you know, a little bit weaker, but like I feel like for raid, it's got to be the premier tank. This tank is insane. It's unkillable. It does probably the highest single target, if not one of the highest single targets. Like, assuming you don't care about your raid buffs, the AMZ is insane. Like, grip is obviously insane in a lot of fights.
Okay.
I would say, like, the only thing with M+ though is M+, it's a little bit on the less good side for sure. Its DPS suffers a lot whenever it comes to AoE or when there's a lot of little things. Because, like, right now, movement screws DKs really hard. The whole idea behind DK right now is you sit in your D&D the entire time. The more you're in your D&D, the more damage your Shattering Bones does. You, like, you know, get all the juice from all those D&D talents. This is a hard one because I would put this in, like, yeah, actually, I probably would have put in A for M+, but, like, if we're including raid, I think it definitely deserves S. AMZ is also insane for A too. Yes, I was just leaving an S.
All right, moving on to Vengeance DH.
Okay, we have a lot of S tiers or what?
We can't. I mean, it seems like people are being pretty liberal with S, so we might do a deep dick dolly dumpster tier on the top. And that's for the special cases. Because it seems like, I'm just going to alter it now because it seems like this tier list is trending high because people are being optimistic, which is good. But we just need that rank there just in case something's out of control.
Yeah, I guess we just, this is hard, I feel like.
Okay.
We'll just put Vengeance in S2.
Okay.
Might as well.
Above or below?
Well, I guess it depends on the Chaos brand too, below for sure.
Below Blood, you think?
No. Yeah, no. Well, Vengeance below Blood.
Okay.
Yeah, so Vengeance right now, I've tried both builds. There's a Fiery Brand build going on, which is more of a standard cheat death build.
Okay.
I think the Fiery Brand build is like a fair bit better. I mean, it works really well in Raid too. It does insane damage. The whole Frailty build is pretty insane right now. Basically, you'd be able to passively take way less damage in both M+ and Raid.
What is the gameplay?
Is
how fun is Vengeance compared to the last expansion?
Oh, it's very fun. I think people who are Vengeance players, this is like probably one of the peak Vengeance gameplays. It's been a very long time since Vengeance has been this fun. I think the biggest part is because of the numbers. Like for the longest time, Vengeance always had these issues. They were either squishy outside of spikes or even meta. They usually did pretty crappy damage in either single target or even like surviving too. Surviving single target was always rough, but this time around, Vengeance is actually insane. They've also got a little bit more buttons to press, and the whole new Frailty playstyle is kind of interesting.
All right.
But yeah, I think in terms of performance, it definitely belongs in S. It does a lot of damage. Chaos Brand is huge value if you don't bring Chaos Brand, even in M+. Like M+, Chaos Brand has always been very big.
Okay.
So we definitely keep it in S.
All right, excellent. Guardian Druid, your OG main and the recent beneficiary of the singular biggest buff of all time. 50% across the board buff to Guardian Druid last week.
Bro, I called it too. Let me just talk about this real quick. So they nerfed Bear multiple times, right? Like they nerfed UFR, they nerfed Moonfire. People were like, why are they nerfing the weakest tank? You know, everyone was coming to my stream. They're like, yo, Dorki, can you tell me about why this class is getting nerfed? I'm telling you guys, like, I had the sauce, man. I knew this class was gonna get buffed up the ass. Like, there was no way this class would, like, since when has Blizzard ever nerfed a weak class? Never, right? I mean, okay, never mind.
They did get the sauce.
Yeah, we'll just continue with this. Anyways, I think it belongs in the top of the top.
Currently, okay.
Yeah, I'm gonna give it.
Not surprising. Pretty sure if you were to ever take any class that's ever existed in this game and buff them by 50%, they will become the singular best of anything at any role. So, yeah, that is not surprising. Deep Dick Dolly Dumpster, first participant is current Guardian Druid. Now I think that's not design wise. You still have issues with a bit of the talent tree and their design. You're just speaking purely power level, right? Okay, cool.
I think it's getting nerfed for sure. I mean, if we're including raid too, so they have this one talent called After the Wildfire. Every 200 rage you spend, you'll heal everyone by like 60k ish, give or take, and it can crit too. So that one talent actually works in raid too, which is really dumb. And the damage of this class is also like all the way up there. But yeah, like I mean, as it stands, I think it's up there, but it's probably gonna get nerfed down to like S.
Yeah,
possibly
we'll
A.
just take everything as they are right now. I think everyone understands. Number one, tier lists are memes to begin with, and second, like I said, literally last 2 weeks ago they nerfed class by 25%, and last week they buffed one by 50. So any of this could change at any moment, right? There's still very volatile changes happening. All right, moving on to Brewmaster. Wait,
this might be the first
this
weak
isn't working.
tank.
1 second.
Wait, what's not working? Oh, he doesn't hear us. What an idiot! Look at him.
All right, I can hear you now. Apologies. Super sorry. My headset like randomly died when I got up.
No worries.
What did you say? Why are they keck Wing?
No, I don't know.
Okay, yeah, you probably didn't say anything. It's whatever. All right, go ahead.
So yeah, Brewmaster. This one, even though it's like I'm gonna put it as the weakest tank right now. I just don't know if I would put it in B. I feel like it still belongs in A, especially if we're including raid too.
Yeah.
So Brewmaster right now, it does by far the best damage. Like this class is insane, especially in AoE. Like any AoE encounter, you go into the pole with Rushing Jade Wind and Charred Passions up, you instantly bang that pole with Bone Dust Brew plus Exploding Keg combo, and it just does infinite damage. Even in raid, it's kind of insane. Like if there are ads coming in, if there are like those spiders in that one spider boss fight, You can literally just like insta kill them all. The problem with Brewmaster though is it's a little bit on the squishy side. I'm sure you've seen before.
I have no idea how good or bad anything is.
Oh,
Purely up
don't
to
worry.
you.
You've played with a Brewmaster in beta.
Yeah, we did some Dorki monk keys, and we tried to run it up like a 18 ruby life pools or something. Like there was a 15 fortified ruby life pools, the first giant pull, and we did reset the dungeon 6 times in 5 minutes, or 3 times in 5 minutes. So that was definitely a banger.
Yeah. I don't think it'll be as bad in raid because you usually have healers. You don't have to tank the pack the entire time, and you have a lot of defensives you can go through. Brewmasters have a lot of defensives now because you have both dampen and diffuse baseline.
Oh yeah, super good change.
Yeah, the biggest problem is like if you're just tanking mobs constantly in M+, this class struggles hard. It has like no self-healing too, and the 40% change heavily affects Brewmaster.
Yeah.
So it's that one tank that is the weakest, but also does the most damage in the game right now.
Yeah, definitely going to be interesting to see what they do to tanks, because they said that any classes that were negatively affected by the most recent change they did, which for people who were not around for it, they did a 40% buff to everyone's HP, player's HP, but they also buffed the damage that everything did by 40%, just a straight 1-for-1. But they did not buff healing by 40%. This was because healers were too OP in raid. Obviously, it didn't really have an effect on tanks that heal based on the damage they take, because they're taking the same amount of damage. They can heal HP-based healing, like Vengeance and Blood. It puts an emphasis on classes with initially much bigger DR, so like classes like Prot Warrior, right? But classes that have not damage taken based healing, but just pure throughput healing, just like every other healer in the game, they in a way like got nerfed inadvertently, I think. So it'd be, I want to say Blizzard is probably going to address that, because they literally said they would address classes that kind of got affected by this, and this is one of the 2 tank specs that got affected by this. So
that is also why Blood Decay is insane, by the way.
Yeah,
like Blood Decay does not give a crap about this.
Same with Vengeance in a way as well. A little less so, but certainly still true. All right, on to Prop Paladin.
I'll also give this an A, but a higher A for sure.
Higher A, okay.
It's got infinite defensives now. It's really flexible too. You can build for a crap ton of damage, or you can build for a ton of survivability. Like right now, Paladins have the most defensives by far. They have Bubble Taunt. You can bring it down to like a 2-minute something CD. You've got Armed Defender on a pretty short CD, like less than a minute. You've got Eye of TR on a minute. You've got Sentinel now, so your wings is like a 30-second long DR, or like just like a defensive in general. And you've got Guardians of Ancient Kings. Plus, you have Guardians of Ancient King proc. So I feel like this tank can just live anything as long as it has some heals. What it brings though, it's like more of an M+ niche because of Avenger Shield silences. Avenger Shield silences are insane. Like they are so good for carrying pugs. I've always said if there's a pug tank, that's Paladin right there.
Oh yeah. I think they like built their whole tree with like Mythic Plus in mind almost. There's just so much AoE cleave stuff going on. It seems like a huge emphasis.
Yeah, very insane in AoE too. That's the other part.
All right, cool. So Prop Paladin, upper A. Moving on to last one, Prot Warrior.
I'll put in the low S.
Okay.
I think this is the best tank for M+ right now, but if we're including Raid 2, I don't think Warrior is as special. The biggest thing is Warrior is unkillable, especially when there are a lot of mobs. When there are a lot of mobs, you have infinite rage generation. And we have BFA levels of Warrior right now. This class is super button mashy. You have a permanent shield block uptime, a shit ton of ignore pains. I don't think this class is like as insane as the rest for Raid specifically.
Okay.
I mean, I could be wrong about this. I mean, like, but also their damage is like not.
We're
as
asking
amazing as
you
other tanks.
and Growl to like each rank all of the specs. You're just giving your best opinion on the subject, right? And you're saying you're even acknowledging like I'm not 100% on this, so that's totally fine. So yeah, so Prot Warrior currently owns a Mythic Plus. You think has a little bit less value in Raid. I just want to point out that I think Prot Warriors are just in such a good spot gameplay wise. Like in BFA, the end of BFA, they were often reviled because they were just so powerful.
Oh yeah.
And Blizzard's choice to remove their power was to they jumbled up some talents, and they like honestly the Shadowlands gameplay of Prot Warrior was so brutal compared to what it was. It was way worse to play, and they remedied all of that. This class absolutely slaps to play, very high pace, feels really good, bunch of really good stuff added back, really quality of life stuff. I mean, they brought back Blood and Thunder, and then they made it instant, so you didn't have to like have that weird Ren GCD. Like, I think the design of Prot Warrior is like stellar, maybe as good as it's ever been.
That's what every tank needs. Every tank needs a Prot Warrior change.
Yep. Facts. I think that's about it. Do you have any other general notes about tanking just in general in this expansion? Because it seems like you rated every tank like decently high, right? You don't think there's any major stinkers. Like
this has to be the best tanks have ever been. Because like, so in my ranking video for M+, I put Blood DK as 5th, but I feel like DK is actually one of the best tanks. It's just that like I don't think it brings anything special compared to the other tanks for M+. So this will be definitely a good tanking expansion.
Yeah.
Aggro is also really good. There's not a lot of aggro issues.
That's so good. That is nothing is worse than a tank playing as well as they can play and a DPS pulling aggro off of them. That doesn't make sense. Like people often misunderstand that argument. They think that like the argument is that tanks should just exist and always have threat and not have to play the game. That's wrong. If you are using every global you can as a tank to AoE on top of mobs and a class can pull off of you and die, like it happened frequently last expansion with like Breath of Syndragosa, Fury Warrior AoE, that's just bad. That's even with tricks and MDs, that is so stupid. That should not happen. So yeah, I'm glad that that isn't a thing, and just because of the baseline buff to tanks in general, that's not a thing.
I'm gonna give a caveat. If you are bursting Omega hard, like Havoc Demon Hunters right now, you can still rip aggro.
Well, that's a special. That's definitely a special case. Like we're gonna get into this in like Mythic Plus balance in a second. Is like outside of the obvious outlier in Mythic Plus damage right now, there's like legit like a ton of classes that do a ton of damage. Not rip threat, like rip damage, like they do well. Right, it's like the DPS Mythic Plus balance somehow with all of this changing is actually pretty decent after the obvious things are going to get tuned. The only one that's pulling is the one that is doing way too much, right? Even Unholy, which has like such high peaks, there's so much setup to Unholy that you don't pull because it's like enough into the pull where you like actually get all their damage out. Yeah. All right, cool. That's all I need. Thank you, Dorki. And for anyone who wants to follow him, twitch.tv/Dorki or on Twitter, he is a Dorki Bear with an insanely low voice. Thanks for coming on and talking about it. Always like having you on. You're a good take factory.
Thank you for having me.
All right, see you, bud. Now we are getting to DPS. This is going to be much more people quickly being swapped in and out. I'm going to try to do this as fast as possible. The first person we're going to be talking to is Taeznak, one of my favorite people to talk to in the WoW community about classes. He is just a great resource for DK, excellent guy. He will be talking about DPS Death Knight. Hello, how are you doing?
Good, how about you?
I am doing well. It's been a long time since we talked. It's been like 2 months or something since we were having those like weekly DK conversations about all the stuff they were playing. So I'm definitely very happy to see how you feel about how they're performing right now, both in your estimation and rate of Mythic Plus, but also just, I mean, I play this class. I'm really excited about it. I've been playing a lot on beta of like just how Frost and Unholy play compared to last expansion and like all the tools they have. So you can kind of take it wherever you want.
Yeah, you want to start with Frost or Unholy?
Let's do with Frost first.
All right. For what's changed, honestly, not a whole lot. Got like Razor Ice on Avalanche. We got Chill Streak now, which is pretty cool. And the rest of it's kind of just stuff we've had previously. So just additions to what's already there. It's very much the same. Like if you played it in Shadowlands, you played it in BFA, you go into it now, you're gonna know how to do it. So
okay,
still pretty much the same.
Just added tools though, right? So they gave them there's now 2-target cleave, Cold Heart. There's Chill Streak, again, like some more 2-target emphasis. You get to play your breath builds with the Remorseless Winter, you know, biting cold talents at the same time as having Rage of the Frozen Champion for the longer breaths, right? Like they just, it seems like they just gave you access in the builds you're playing to just have more stuff.
Yeah, pretty much. It's like the same core, but with a couple additions on top of it. And all those additions are really cool, really interesting. Only one that's a little bit iffy is Shattering Blade, but that one's more like if you're playing dual wield obliteration, which I don't know if many people will, but all of it's really good. Really like the changes that they made. The trees in general, I don't know, it feels like it's lacking something new, but otherwise I'm quite happy with Frost, honestly.
All right. How do you think it will perform in Mythic Plus and Raid in Season 1, if you had to guess?
Oh, okay. So for Raid, there's a lot of cleave fights in the Raid, and a lot of fights that really work well with 2-minute cooldowns. So I feel Frost is going to do incredibly well in the Raid. Specifically with breath, potentially some obliteration builds for single target. So with the raid performance, I probably put it like high A tier, but it does come with the caveat that, I mean, Mythic Plus, it's not nearly as good as it used to be because it is relying on those long breath windows now. So it does bump it down a little bit. I'd say probably high B, low A.
Okay.
Let's go. Everybody's being positive, so I'm going to go low A.
Sure. Yeah, I think that's fine. And Frost DK is so weird with that too, because like I've done a few on beta. Actually, most of my Frost DK has been off stream. I've noticed that like the difference between playing Frost DK in a dungeon with a pug low, like key 2 low situation, where you're just popping breath and the thing dies, it's actually horrible, and it always has been for that reason, because like you're just losing all your damage. But if you're playing in a pre-made and you're kind of chaining pulls and allowing you to keep it up, it is extremely powerful, right? So it's definitely
absolutely.
your opinion on Frost DK will vary widely based on your use case for it, and for that reason alone of its potential, I agree with the high A and the raid take. Good. On to Unholy.
Unholy. This Unholy basically got a full rework going into Dragonflight. Like, the core of it's still there. You still got, your Festering Wounds, Scourge Strike, all that. But basically everything surrounding it was updated, changed. And the tree is actually incredible. You have so much versatility. You can, go with a insane burst single target build. You can go insane burst AoE. And really, Unholy's only weakness ends up being in those cleave scenarios, which Frost does incredibly well at. So DPS DK in general just kind of hits every niche you could possibly want. Then it's Execute. Like, Unholy is incredible. Trying to explain everything that's changed would probably take too long, but I'll just hit the big ones. Like,
Okay.
Apocalypse now 45 seconds cooldown rather than variable based on Death Coil casts. Unholy Assault was buffed massively. We now have Super Strain. Commander of the Dead's back, which is the old Legion shoulders. And Gargoyle has been buffed to High Heaven, and it is so good. Oh yeah, Vile Contagion too. Can't forget to mention this. Spreading wounds on 7 nearby targets is absolutely insane. Probably the best addition they could have made to Unholy for AoE this expansion, and it works so well. In Mythic Plus, it's really good, but it requires high pull counts, so...
Same thing as Frost. Both DK specs are 2 specs that you have to pull around in dungeons, basically, but... I mean, Unholy is the level of power similar to some things in BFA where if you pulled around it, both its funnel single target from just getting high Festermite value and bursting swords value, but it is very specific. You do have to pull around it. So I think it's definitely something where you'll see it in very competitive play as like a one of in like the MDI. You'll definitely see this expansion. But then just generally though, you can have a bad experience as Unholy in Pugs because it just, sometimes it just doesn't feel good. Weird thing that both of you guys have.
Yeah, and its weakness in Cleave too really like exaggerates that issue. So if you're going to a Pug and the tank's pulling small constantly, Unholy's just gonna have a real bad time. But the ability to go super bursty single target, super bursty AoE, it's an incredibly versatile spec. With the damage it's doing on beta, I'm probably gonna say it's gonna be mid S tier, probably right next to Blood.
Sure. Actually, yeah, good ranking. Yeah, and just design wise speaking for me, I love that it has like, the execute talent, how it has Gargoyle back and it just slaps on an opener, and it has the Festermite AoE package. The only thing I will say about Unholy playing multiple builds on live, or on beta, sorry, it feels better that they buffed your overall amount of resources you have in this expansion. Clearly, you're swimming in resources where outside of your CD window in Shadowlands, it felt like, at times you were a little starved. That does not happen anymore, but almost it has an opposite problem where like if there was a talent somewhere in the tree that made your Death Coil and Epidemic do 40% more damage but cost 40% more runic power or something, that would feel unbelievable, because just even if it's correct to do in single target or any damage scenario, ever to cap resources or feel like you're swimming in it, it's like that anxiety feeling of like not being able to spend it all in time, especially if you're getting chain sudden doom procs, and I just feel like Unholy suffers a little bit from that, where I wish you could dump your runic power faster.
Oh, absolutely. Especially in AoE too. If you're in a bursting swords window in a pack and you have runes, you are not touching your runic power. You're going to sit there and you're going to cap on it, and there's nothing you can do about it. Pressing Epidemic's just the wrong choice. So it ends up in an awkward situation where too little resources feels terrible, too much resources also kind of feels terrible. It's really hard to balance on that razor's edge.
Sure. All right. I think that's all about it. Thank you. I have to kind of do these pretty quick, but obviously I always love having you on. If any of you guys want to follow him, Taeznak is his channel. He's a very prominent DK theory crafter, member of their community. A bunch of other really good guys, Biceps Pump, bunch of dudes in that Discord. It's one of the DPS DK specifically is one of the better class communities in WoW. So I would definitely encourage you guys to have one of those places. There's a lot of class Discords, super cursed. The DPS DK specifically, very good. It's run by good people. So thanks for being on, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Have a good day, man.
All right, see ya. All right, next we're going to do Havoc. I'm going to see if Jedith is around. All right, calling him up. Wait, how do you say your name? Is it Jedith or Jedith?
It's Jedith.
Oh, fuck. Okay, well, my bad.
I heard you called me Jereico earlier, too. So
yeah, I did. Well, okay, so there's 2 people who I've not spoken to before today, on voice, I think. One of them is Jereico, one of them is Jedith. Very similar. Both start with a GE. Got all that going on. So yeah. All right, so I have you here to talk about one spec today. Not insanely in depth, has to be pretty quick, but just your general thoughts about Havoc from where it came from in Shadowlands to where it is now. Gameplay, how you feel about it, and then its general power level.
Sure. Okay. So yeah, I think generally Havoc is we've been very lucky in this transition from the new over to the new talent tree. We're definitely like one of the specs that came out better than it was before. And that's no surprise because we used to be like one of the worst designed classes, in my opinion. And the limitations in our talents made it really hard to like actually come up with good builds. But now we have like some of the most unique talents, I think, with Know Your Enemy and Any Means Necessary. They're both talents that scale with our stats, meaning we have longevity going through the expansion and through the tiers. Yeah, other than that, like our kit is super good, pretty happy with it. We have a lot of tools now to kind of function in any scenario. The problem is people don't necessarily like those tools, but we're definitely like pretty versatile now. In terms of pain points, I think our class tree got basically massacred in the process of tuning.
Oh yeah.
We lost Sigil of Silence, which I know a lot of people are upset about because they're really excited to play with it. We also have this like really strange situation with Sigil of Misery. So it's basically a modifying talent for Sigil of Misery, and it makes the mob hit by it take extra damage. So now we're feeling obligated to like take that and use a utility as an offensive spell. I think first, like we need to mention that we lost access to Fell Eruption, which is our single target stun, and Netherwalk, which is our budget immune. So those are both things.
Yeah, I'm actually doing an interview in a few days, and that is one of my direct questions to them, is specifically your spec and Moonkin are the only two specs in the game that have to get an interrupt or an important piece of defensiveness or utility, being Fell Eruption or Netherwalk, and you lose 5 to 10% damage when literally no other class in the game does that, to where it's like no one's going to make that choice, right? And that is a huge issue. So I'll be asking them that directly.
Yeah, you have to sacrifice something, and it's going to be a weird thing to get used to because I think we were so, just trained to think we always have Netherwalk at our disposal whenever we need it. And even in Mythic Plus, knowing that we have an extra stop in Fell Eruption, and now we don't have that. It's definitely going to take some getting used to. What else in the spec tree? There's Momentum, I guess, which is a pretty hot topic. Essentially, for those that don't know, its impact was reduced to kind of keep it in line with other potential builds. But then by doing that, they made it feel pretty bland and boring because it just kind of happens behind the scenes as you play your rotation if you're playing the Essence Break build. So now they've technically kind of made it worse for players that liked it and simultaneously like failed to convince the people that hate it that it's fun to play. Yeah, other than that, like I think with the momentum argument, I think it can be argued that the quick snappy damage boost that we used to get from momentum is now kind of in Vengeful Retreat and Initiative. It's like Initiative is one of the best talents on that tree.
I love that they added that. It's like, for people who don't know what it is, it's basically a nerfed version of First Strike from last expansion, but you can reactivate it on command with a cooldown. It's actually insane. It's so cool.
Yeah, and if you're like really paying attention to it, you can min-max it. And because of that, and with its like functionality with the talent Know Your Enemy, it's a huge damage boost to actually use it properly and get it going. Yeah, but other than that, I mean, I think we're in a really good spot.
Okay.
Everything can all change really quickly though, if there's any slight nerfs or whatever. I do think though, like if we are to eat any nerfs, we're in a spot where I think we're still going to come out of it in a great spot just because of our kit, because of the changes.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's it.
All right, so where would you put it as of right now?
I'm gonna be humble. I'm gonna put it on A.
Okay. Like high A?
I know people disagree, but this is a meme tier list, right?
It is a meme tier list. Yeah. Okay. All right. So okay, I'll just put it like high-ish A then.
Sure, A plus.
Oh, A plus. Okay, we'll put it at the top of A. All right.
A plus plus.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Well, thanks for being on. If you guys want to follow him, you can follow Jedith at twitch.tv/Jedith. He also has that's your Twitch name, right? That's correct?
Yep.
Cool. And he has a YouTube channel as well. So make sure you guys check that out. All right, cool. Thanks for being on, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yep.
See ya.
All right, bye. Dude, there's no fucking shot he put that in A. There's no way. That's not even a fucking comment, man. Just like watch any Mythic Plus dungeon for fucking 5 seconds. All right, that's fine. I respect the fuck out of that. Naguura time. Okay, Naguura, hello.
Hello.
Hello. Nice to see you. Hope to see you again soon, IRL, which would be really fun, maybe. Who knows? We need you to talk about balance. It's been through a lot. It's obviously grabbed the, like the Legion spammable version of Starfall, but the same size as you had last expansion. They recently had some nerfs added to them. Basically, how do you feel about Moonkin? Gameplay-wise, talent tree, general thoughts and concerns, things you like, all that stuff.
All right. So first of all, I'm going to say that a pretty big difference in opinions, I guess, between me and what most other Moonkins think, and also what the theory crafters think.
That's totally
So
fine.
I'm just gonna
Yeah, you
so I'm
rip
just
your
gonna
own
say
opinion.
what I think, and then I'll say what the other people say. All right.
Okay, sure.
All right. So I think specifically for AOE, Dragonflight Moonkin feels infinitely better than Shadowlands or BFA because Starfall, we can finally cast Starfall, and it's not like on cooldown anymore, as you all mentioned. And I think we also generate a lot more astral power in AoE, so it actually just feels like the whole playstyle feels better in my opinion. Now, something that a lot of people have a problem with is the focus on Stellar Flare. So it's like a third dot that we consistently have to like keep up now on AoE if we want to do the max damage, and it just adds a lot of ramp to our damage, additionally to the ramp that we already had before. And our mastery changed as well. So now it's not only Eclipse that gives us more damage, but also having our dots on the targets, which of course means that we're just going to be worse at switching targets, because to do our maximum damage, we have to apply our dots first, which is something that Moonkin needs to be really good at, to like switching targets and stuff. We're really versatile in our playstyle, and now in Dragonflight, we're going to need more ramp for it, and we're not going to be as good anymore at that as we used to be before. So that is something that people really dislike, and I can totally relate, but I personally like
you're not the only one.
I kind of like it.
I think a lot of people like the added complexity as well, right? Like the I think I'm not saying like obviously power level or anything, but just like I think design wise, I think you're spot on. They were the last like fully designed, completely remade spec tree before they moved on to the tuning phase and kind of stopped the design, rip the druid class tree for not getting that same treatment. But you like outside of the solar beam thing, I think in general you like the class tree as well, right? Or the spec tree?
Okay, so the solar beam is obviously a big problem. Additionally, there's a lot of other issues with our talent tree, specifically that our capstones and the bottom part of our talent tree is really, really bad. So that causes that causes multiple problems. Number one, it means that our top part is much better, and therefore we will always just pick the best talents, which means that we don't have that many different builds, which obviously is an issue. And the bottom capstones are just kind of like you don't need them because they're so bad. So yeah, so playstyle wise, it doesn't affect us because obviously that's more of a like choice thing and not really playstyle. But I think it's also going to be confusing to a lot of players, especially more casual players that think, oh, I can get all of these capstones, but then they're actually just really weak and give you less than like 0.5% damage, which it just feels bad.
Yeah, I need to know why every class in the game can select an interrupt and almost none of them lose anything. And if they do lose something, it is so minor. It's like a class tree point or two, and the damage loss is negligible. And Moonkins, again, 7% like plus. Is that the number? To select an interrupt, you lose 7% or more of your damage, depending on what type of fight it is?
I don't know the exact number right now, but it's definitely a lot. And it also just feels bad because even if you don't lose a lot of damage from them, it's still just talents you never play with, and then they're not really fun to play with either. So it just feels generally bad to select them.
Actually,
but yeah, it's a pretty big number.
Yeah. That is a lot of the talent tree stuff is very good. That is very bad. That has to be worked on immediately. Okay, so general power level, all PvE season 1 raid mythic plus Moonkin. Also keep in mind, still has a lot of good utility from the druid class, right? So where are you putting it?
Yeah, so I think for rating, it should be pretty high, but for M+, I think it's going to be incredibly low, especially because of the Starfall nerf and stuff. And we all know how bad Moonkin is in low M+ in general. In high M+, it might be okay, but still not as good as other classes. So I think we're going to have to put it pretty low, just because M+ is literally half the content.
Okay.
So even if it would be like A for rating, I think we're going to have to put it B, just because it really has so many issues with the ramping and all that stuff.
I think putting it B just to have a light shown on it, just so Blizzard knows about the solar beam thing, and if anything can happen to have that be fixed, that would be good. Also, it's super weird now because people are wanting to like rate their class, but they know that someone put Havoc DH in A, which like literally anyone who's played the beta is like, so. And I can't move that because I'm not rating anything on this tier list. So we're just gonna ask everyone to ignore that that's there. Yes, okay. So high B for Moonkin currently. I feel like all your concerns, especially design wise, of course, won't speak anything on the power level, are valid. So all right, I take that. I appreciate your opinion and thank you. And wait, you said what do you think? You said your opinion was a little different from theory crafters and other moonkins. Can you elaborate on that a little bit more?
I just want to, like, that's just playstyle wise. Like, I think
Okay.
a lot of the theory crafters are against a lot of the playstyle changes that we've received. And I personally think it's a lot better than what we had before. I still don't think it's like perfect by any means, but I think that BFA and Shadowlands was a disaster playstyle wise, specifically with Starfall problems. So now I think it's a lot better. But yeah, still issues. And other theory crafters, I think they don't value that as highly, that the playstyle is better. And they're mainly concerned about the tuning, and that like puts their opinion about Moonkin further down.
Yeah. Okay, excellent. I still need to like slam through these way faster, so I'm just gonna have to get out of here. All right, thank you so much for coming on. You guys follow her at Twitch TV/Naguura. Also has a insane Twitter, and I'm sure like Instagram and all that shit, YouTube. Just go check her out. We react to her videos sometimes. I'm sure a lot of my viewers are aware. Her stuff is on the it's on the screen. All right, thank you, Naguura. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good one.
All right, you too. Bye bye. All right, calling up Psybear. I just hope he's there. I'm not even messaging him. Thoughts on Feral Druid? Got one of the biggest fundamental design changes of any spec in this expansion, putting their damage back in their bleeds. How do you feel about it?
Yeah, I mean, last time we spoke, it was before the massive rework, right? Yeah, the rework was kind of insane, actually. Like, we got a new dev and everything, as far as we know, and like then we had like this massive overhaul on the tree, and honestly, it was like very unexpected from my point of view. But yeah, Feral right now, like, I'll start with the fun stuff, right? Feral right now, by the way, hopefully you can't hear me clicking too much. I'm in a classic Naxxramas right now, so hopefully
that's Giga Chat.
that's
Okay,
fine.
all good.
Right now, Feral is the most fun it's like ever been, like hands down, and that's why I was really wanting to come on your stream to talk about it, because I want to advocate to people that it is, if you've like never played Feral, or if you're like, oh, I don't know whether to play Feral or like this or that, Feral right now is incredibly fun, and it's not just me that thinks that. I've spoken to, like, you know, everyone I speak to, everyone's like, oh my god, this is the best iteration we've seen. And I think it's just like very modern now. Like, a lot of issues for people was it was like slow in terms of like energy regen and stuff like that, but they've just sorted all of that out. And it's obviously, like you say, very bleed heavy now, but within that we also have a lot of burst, so we can like handle multiple situations. We can do, our single target isn't as good as it was comparable to other specs, but like we can deal with AoE, we can deal with burst cleave, we can deal with consistent AoE, like we can just do it all now, which is really cool. Okay, boss is dead. Nice, I can talk. It's really, really fun from a playstyle perspective, and I think in Mythic Plus it's going to be like good. In Raid, I think it's going to be, I feel like it has potential to maybe be in like the Race Sword first, maybe it could be in like MDI, that kind of thing.
Okay.
But I also don't think it's like S tier or like giga tier or anything like that.
Okay.
I think it's probably like a good solid A.
Sure.
I think defensively, like when we start to go to higher level keys and stuff like that, and like maybe Mythic Prog, defensively I think we're like a little bit lacking compared to other specs.
Yeah.
But and our damage isn't as good as like, you know, the A tier Havoc or Outlaw or anything like that. So I feel like we're just under that. I feel like we're at a comfortable level. There's probably some specs that need to be buffed up to our level, and some specs that maybe need to be nerfed down to our level, but I feel like we're in a good spot. But we have some really nice niche like healing as well. Nature's Vigil, like I feel like that could genuinely be a cool thing to do with like dropping a healer on a raid boss maybe, and doing like, I don't, if it's like a big AoE cleave fight, and you could have like a heal, group heal there from Feral. It's kind of like Ancestral Guidance or like Vampiric Embrace kind of thing. But that's really good. So yeah, I mean, anything else I didn't cover?
No, I think that's basically it. Basically, gameplay is sick. You feel like your Mythic Plus and Raid takes are there. Sorry, I was a little distracted there for a second because I'm realizing how distracting it is for chat to continually look at Havoc and A. But I am not giving my opinion on any single spec in the game, so I'm just going to ask chat where they think Havoc should be rated real quick as a poll, because it's too distracting to every single other ranking, because everyone else was like pretty like honest with it, and I feel like that one might be a little ridiculous. Okay, for them. And then yeah, no, I actually really appreciate that. I'm an OG like Feral main, played it really long. I haven't played it in years. I haven't really played it much on the beta, but I'm so glad to hear that it's super fun again, because I feel like they really, really ruined that spec, and it was just they just created an assassination rogue. Garrote was Rake, and Rupture was Rip, and Envenom was Ferocious Bite, and it was the same class, and it used to be so different and so unique in the way that it did damage, and they're bringing a lot of that back. I'm sure they'll continue tuning it and stuff like that, and I think in general still the Druid class tree needs a little work Especially for
I didn't
Feral.
even talk about the class tree, but yeah, sorry, go on.
No, but I mean, you can just especially for Feral, I think the class tree doesn't make a ton of sense. It's just it was the first one ever made. It needs a fresh coat of paint. Very simple. They ran out of time to do it. I think that's the obvious answer.
Yeah, I think that's agreeable. There's some good stuff on that, but yeah, it's just a little bit outdated. But yeah, Feral itself, honestly, Max, you should, if you find time between now and the race and everything, you should give it a shot because it's really, really fun. And everyone I know that's been playing it, like, this is probably one thing I'll add as well, actually, final thing, but there's definitely a higher skill cap to it. Generally speaking, I know a lot of people that are nervous about playing it ask me, like, you know, how difficult is it? I think it's one of those specs that's going to be like fairly easy to pick up, but like very difficult to master when there's a lot of mechanics going on and you got fast ticking bleeds and you're trying to upkeep 5 different bleeds and stuff. So it's definitely on the harder side, but it's really rewarding and really, really fun. And I know that a lot of people, like, I think Speed's been playing it and like Gangnam and stuff, and like they've been saying they're really enjoying it. So I think Canex as well is playing it. So just so you know, Echo's got a Feral Druid. I don't know if you need one for the race. Like, does Liquid need one? Make sure you have one. Okay.
Yeah.
I see that smile.
Yeah. We have everything. Or
yeah, you have everything you need
covered. Yeah, we're good.
Yeah, that's good, man. All right. Well,
have you not heard about him? Have you not heard about him?
Him? Who's him?
I mean, if you don't know about him, then I mean, I don't know what to tell you. That's it. All right. Thank you for the time. Always appreciate talking to you.
Of course. Yeah, you too. Good luck. Peace.
Yep. See ya. Bye. All right, we have to do Evoker. I'm doing Jereico, calling him now.
Hello.
Excellent. Hello. Okay, and you are someone who's kind of thrown yourself headfirst into Devastation Evoker, correct?
All right. So yeah, I mean, if you're in any of the sort of Devastation beta communities, Discord and all that, you might know me as the guy who made the big Google Doc with all of the crap in it. And what you guys should know is that I'm a Shadow Priest one trick since Legion. Surrender to Madness, Emerald Nightmare. I've been chasing that high ever since. So I'll let Publik talk about Shadow, but it's safe to say it's a thing. So. Let me, I guess, I don't know, start with a couple things and let me know if you want me to take it anywhere. So, bottom line, guys, I just want you to be, super aware that where we are at level 60 here is not representative of tuning at level 70. So when you go make your Evoker, please, for the love of God, don't judge its damage or anything like that.
That goes for every class. Do you know how many times I've been in like someone's random stream and they were doing a live season 4 esque Mythic Plus dungeon with like level 60 only talents and like random covenant spells and stuff, and being like, man, this class isn't doing too hot. It's like, this is literally nothing. This is like a fucking carnival. Like, this has nothing to do with the actual game.
It's the worst. So please, get on there, play with the make your cool dumb dragons. Send me your dumb dragons. That's awesome. Play with the abilities. Get to know it, but don't judge the damage, for God's sake. Like, tuning is something completely separate at 70. So let's just leave that there. And then there's one more thing that I need to make sure I say before we get on here. I need to give a big shout out to the dev team working on Evoker for doing just an amazing job with community feedback over the beta cycle. So they've been actually really, really good about fixing bugs and getting feedback and this kind of stuff. And this might be a little controversial because there are a couple things that they're not going to move on, right? They're not going to move on the range thing. That's just kind of part of the experiment. It's something that they want to see play out. But since that point 3 months ago, my God, they changed like half the tree. They reworked Fire Breath and Burnout completely.
Yep.
They buffed defensives when they were lacking. They buffed Pyre and Volatility. So now the AoE rotation actually kind of makes sense. It's a little reasonable, right? So, I mean, I know that, just comparing to some of the other, specs and classes and all that out there, they've been super responsive and super great. I know there's going to be an interview in a couple days with one of the designers as well talking about it. So
yeah, I think Priest's doing an interview with the Evoker to Guy on Thursday.
Exactly. So show them all the love. It's been great from that angle. There are some memes that Devastation is a bit of an advanced class, right? Obviously, when you type in your thing and... that's going to be part of the selling point. So this is a class that it's going to appeal to people to hopefully make some alts, to just mess around. It's really easy to get into. But there are some kind of interesting mechanics and interactions that actually tie the whole thing together. So the way that they changed Fire Breath, for example, they really tie, they have it now so that the longer that you empower it, it moves more of that damage into the immediate sort of burst damage rather than the dot. And typically speaking, in single target, you want that dot rolling, so you have interactions that sort of, synergize with it, because you have stuff like this catalyzed talent that's making you do more damage. You have procs, right? But what you can also do is, because it captures all of that damage all at once, you can almost snapshot, in a way, the value of kind of temporary buffs and that kind of thing. Say you're running at the end of Bloodlust, you have a trinket that's running out, that sort of thing. You can just capture all that value right at the end, and it has some real cool playstyle interactions. You can chain disintegrates, so use the pandemic mechanic. I kind of see your face there. That's hilarious.
No. The only reason I was making a face is because I randomly had an ad. Like I forgot to run an ad before I called you. So now there's just an ad for a minute and 40 seconds.
Well, I'll leave this for the end of it, but obviously the mastery is sort of very, very different, very unique, and you're gonna see a lot of min-max in sort of managing your cooldown around sort of optimizing for the value of that mastery throughout the fight.
Yeah,
so
definitely super interesting. They're adding a mastery into the game that is do damage at higher health. Obviously, it's up during your cooldown window, which is at a nice, like, clean 2 minutes, but it is definitely interesting to look at. Where do you think this class ends up in its first? Because it's so weird, right? When you look at classes that have been released into this game, there's like this common thought that, oh, well, they're going to make sure it's OP. But, like, honestly, if you look back to anything except for Death Knight, like, that hasn't really been accurate. Like, all 3 monk specs, very average when it came out. 1 tier later after they came out, Mistweaver was insanely broken, but, like, not right away. And then Demon Hunter was pretty average, both specs. One of them was, like, really bad for, like, an entire 2 years. So, like, there's no real actual thing to go off of to say that, like, whatever their new class is will definitely be insane. How do you feel about, its viability in a raid comp? Obviously you can always play around the 25-yard range thing. That's an entirely separate discussion. But how do you feel about Evoker right now's power level?
Absolutely. So in very general terms, it's looking extremely competitive in terms of its AoE damage, its cleave damage, and especially its burst profile. You roll up on a pack at M+, and you can do some ungodly things, which is really nice. It kind of has some aggro issues, actually, at the end of the day. I won't get into it too much, but just because of the way that it works, where, you have your mastery that's front-loading all of your damage, you have all these burst things. We were talking about before some tanks that, struggle to hold aggro in some of these situations. Devastation is one of those offenders on that side of things. But more on the raid side, I'm expecting, just a very solid performer overall. It is one of these sort of tuning-dependent classes at the end of the day. If we were to get into utility, I don't know to what extent I would describe Evoker's raid utility as mandatory, and I'm definitely going to catch shit if I'm too optimistic and you guys don't include
Give
an
your full
Evoker in
opinion,
your comps.
man. Don't give a shit about them. There's always going to be people who are negative and positive, just because that's just the way they feel about things. Everyone wants their class to be the very best, and if it's not, they're negative, which is means that 90% of people are mad at all times. You can just give your honest opinion.
Chat's saying I gotta pick a letter. All right, so yeah, Evoker, Devastation, solid A right in the middle, slam Gary right in there. We'll see how it goes. Yeah.
Thanks for talking, Jereico, and you guys can check him on the top of the screen in all the places you can find him. I gotta go really fast.
Sounds good. Cheers.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yep. All right, bye. All right, so I need to call Azortharion now. It is Hunter time. Also, guys, I want to say something about chat. I saw this very briefly when he was talking. Don't do the snooze thing, pick a letter. I need to leave it on me to keep it moving. It's super fucked up for these people to come on and give me their opinions on classes, and then people are being super fucking mean to them. That guy was great. He's really passionate about Evoker. He's giving his take on it. You need to just relax a little bit. All good. Hello. Is it right spelling, by the way? Is Azortharion your Twitch?
Yeah, you got it right.
Perfect. Okay, so I have you here to talk about every single spec of Hunter. You can start on whichever one you want. I'm sure you've been listening to some of the stuff previously, hopefully, but how is your just general thoughts, balance at the end, but just design, class trees, things they can work on, their kind of place, what they've done with them. There's a lot to talk about, I'm sure, especially with one of them. So, all right, take it wherever you want.
All right, sure thing. Well, I'm going to start out with BM. So I got some notes in front of me here. I'm just going to go over exactly what you mentioned. So what's changed for BM? The biggest thing, so when you log in on Dragonflight, is you'll notice that at least when you run the optimal talents, Alpha Predator has 2 charges, or gives kill command 2 charges, which has usually been, for as long as BM has existed, the main ability you hit on cooldown. Yeah, really good change. And I'd say, just as an overarching thing about BM, is it's probably the spec that has gone forward the most in terms of gameplay. It's almost all positive gameplay-wise. So that part is good. So far, the meta game of BM has been about balancing out your Cobra shots and kill commands and not wasting the cooldown reduction from Cobra shots. But now that kill command has 2 charges, that is much more lenient, and you feel more at ease and at liberty to press the buttons that you want. Second thing, which is AoE-centric, is that kill command now beast cleaves with the kill cleave talent. And that has been something practically everyone has been asking for many years now. Because the problem with BM has been, you hit multi-shot to activate Beast Cleave on AoE, and like it's hands off. Like your pet does all the work, and you don't really feel part of the AoE damage that you're doing. So now that pressing your main nuke kill command contributes to your cleave, that's a huge beneficial change, both for like in terms of
both
AoE
such
damage.
simple changes, right?
Exactly.
But they're just so good, especially the kill command thing. I just think anytime you have something that can proc or reset its cooldown or get reduced, adding a second charge to a short cooldown thing like that just makes you feel so much less shit about worrying about munching procs and stuff like that. It just adds so much to the gameplay.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's like these things should have happened ages ago, but I'm not gonna complain that it. I'm just happy that we're here now.
Definitely.
So another thing is that maybe not so positive is that we have basically no real cooldowns left. So Aspect of the Wild, which used to be a pretty crappy, but it existed at least, is turned into a talent that does something completely different now. And it's not really something we almost ever play with. And obviously Wild Spirit, which was like, even non-hunters know what Wild Spirits is because it carried,
it's
like,
so obvious on the ground.
Yeah, exactly. And it was obvious, and it was also obvious on the meter. Wild Spirits was awesome. We don't really have a replacement, and BM is kind of left with a very flat damage profile and not much in the way of burst.
Which is actually kind of unique, though, because, like, just not power level speaking about that at all, but, like, when you're looking at, like, good damage profiles in a raid, there's been so many really, really hard fights where you felt like you wanted huge bursty classes to kill it, but if you just mix in, for every 3 of those you have, one class that's just a steady straight line, that really helps smooth out damage checks and things like that. It's actually a really desirable spec because there's so few of them in the game.
For sure.
Definitely not a bad thing.
Yeah, especially if the damage, like by the end of everything, like when the boss is dead, like the damage is actually there. Then if you have, other classes in your Mythic Plus group or your raid that can do that kind of burst damage, whether it's for ads or just like nuking through a shield, whatever, then a flat damage profile is pretty good. But I would still personally take a bursty profile that is also like just generally high, and we'll get into that later.
All right, cool.
So what I put under the what's bad is like the no cooldown / burst to speak of, which is like, as you mentioned, it can be nice, but it's really like depending on the numbers, right? If it's flat but high, it's fine. If it's flat but like just middle of the road, it's kind of not so good.
Mm-hmm.
Another good thing about BM is that like we go into these talents that spawn Diabees, so you have a bit more of that like Sue playstyle, a bit like almost like demo Warlocks, like what BM should have been, where you summon a crap ton of beasts and you send them at your target. Yeah, it's really cool. So overall, BM is pretty good spot in terms of gameplay. Not a lot of negative things to say. You asked me to talk about what should Blizzard focus on, and let's say it comes back to the burst. There's this talent in our tree called Call of the Wild, towards the bottom on the right, and it's basically this huge 3-minute cooldown that summons your entire stable, just throws them at your target. Really cool, bit like the old world Stampede from like Mr. Pandaria or so. But that is so undertuned, even though it has like really cool talents, and it looks like it should be powerful, but it just isn't. So if there's one thing that BM hunters globally are wishing for, it's for Call of the Wild to be, if not meta, then at least relevant in situations where you want burst damage. Because right now we just have no option to fill that niche. Not necessarily to be the best at that niche, but to like, be there, show up on the meter in the first 10 seconds of the fight.
I feel like BM is on the very highest list of purely design, just... And they weren't even major. That wasn't like it got redesigned. It was just all a bunch of very small, very good changes and a thematic gameplay style change where people are, you have just so many more pets, right? Like if there's any class that should ever have that identity, obviously it's been demo for a while, but like that is like right up BM's alley, right? So I feel like that tree is like a masterpiece, and just that entire class is just so good. Obviously you always hope it's tuned well, but just design-wise, BM has just been in such a good spot. Yeah,
for sure. And in terms of power level, compared to the other hunter specs, it's basically the best at everything. I'll get into a little bit more of the details later on as we put them in tier list, but power level, it's pretty strong as well. On that note, I guess I'll move on to MM, if that's cool.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so in terms of what changed, well, there's 2 ways to look at it. Either nothing changed or it changed very fundamentally. So if you played MM kind of recently, it was a really degenerate playstyle with the legendary and tier set bonus combination from season 3 onwards in Shadowlands, but that is gone. But now MM is very similar to how played early in Shadowlands, where it was, well, the spec made sense. Like you pressed reasonable buttons. It's a bit more leaning on rapid fire. Like you basically have 2 really powerful buttons that do most of the work, which is aim shot and rapid fire.
Yeah.
Yeah, and now it leans more towards rapid fire and less towards aim shot. especially with the recent buff and nerf cycle they did to it. And most people who play MM quite like that. So what I think of as MM's big niche, or like what separates MM from BM, is that every button is powerful and every button pretty much matters. MM has always been about the big burst, and that's why it's been brought successfully for fights like Sire. You could pro down the Wild Spirits and Sylvanas platforms and that kind of thing. Even if it lacked a little bit in the single target department, that on-demand guaranteed high burst AoE damage, also an Artificer, like to nuke the platforms down, that was really strong.
On-demand burst AoE is always insanely important in raids, and MM has historically always been one of the very best classes at that, for sure.
Yeah. And that trend generally continues. It is a strong burst spec, but as we'll get into later, like the numbers are tuned a bit low in my estimation. But yeah, that'll say what's good. Like every button feels powerful, and especially during true shot, your burst and like your feeling of power under your fingers is just insane. Like you can see the health of mobs go down
when you press
as you press your aim shot. Yeah.
Yeah,
even though it's a 20-man raid and others are popping their cooldowns as well. Like, you're topping on those ads, generally speaking. We're dipping into some talents to give us, like, random procs of True Shot, which is either a great thing, because it's more of the fun stuff, which is True Shot, or it's a horrible thing, if you ask others, because, like, it adds more RNG to the rotation. But in terms of, like, numbers, like, we're not much more RNG than we used to be. So overall, I'd rate that as a pretty good thing. Another cool thing is that we got a sort of a bit of an execute niche. So there's basically, like, two main ways to build MM in the tree, aside from the AoE, which is its own thing. And there's basically a way of getting the random true shot procs and superpowered true shots. And then there's the kill shot nodes, which are kind of like spread all across the tree. And we're also making a return of this talent from Legion called Bullseye that stacks crit chance whenever we go drop below 20%. That was insane back in Legion. Like for an avatar DPS check, really powerful for that. Any kind of execute DPS check, super strong. We're getting a little bit of that back because obviously we have our burst. Now we can combine that burst. And part of that is this talent that enhances True Shot, which increases crit damage during True Shot. And obviously Bullseye gives you a crap ton of crit towards the bottom of the spec tree. If it was tuned right, and we'll get into it, you would really be able to make a difference in like execute phases, as you mentioned, whether it's Jailer or, well, not Sylvanas, because that's the outlier, but that kind of thing.
And also I just love, again, just purely design-wise, I love the choice node where you have the Giga True Shot, or I don't know how they're tuned at all, but like just the idea of shorter cooldown True Shot or Giga True Shot.
Yeah, more common or more powerful. Yeah, that's a good like design choice in general. Calling the shots is a little bit undertuned, unfortunately. So unless like we specifically need like the timing that it provides, we'll probably not use it that much. But we'll get into that in the feedback section.
Sure. Okay. Cool.
As for what is bad, 2 targets. So basically, season 3, season 4, we actually got a 2 target back just because of how those things interacted. But now it's kind of gone again. And they've given us these 2 talents called Chimera Shot, top right of the spec tree, and Bombardment, which is like in the middle of the left side of the tree. And these are supposed to basically give us a little bit of 2-target cleave, but they're tuned so poorly that it's almost not worth bothering. I think they're like strictly optimal for 2-target, but you might as well just go for pure single target at that point. I'm imagining a fight like Kurok, like if you bring MM to that fight, I don't see you even playing the 2-target talents, even though you
that's
might imagine.
Problem. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Then there's this talent all the way at the bottom of the left side of the tree, which is basically the AoE stuff, called Salvo.
Oh, yeah.
Which basically just attaches explosive shots to your multi-shot or volley every 45 seconds. And this is like an internal cooldown ability, and these are pretty rare. I really don't like this because obviously you can't control when it happens. It's a capstone talent, or like maybe not capstone, but like a bottom row talent that is meant to be super powerful, but it happens in the background, and sometimes it happens when you don't want it to, and that feels bad. I would have liked for it to only attach itself to volley, because then because multi-shot you're spamming all the time.
You're spamming all the time. Volley is more on demand. Yeah,
volley is more on demand, so you can send it on some burst AoE, which is exactly what MM is all about. Then just above that, in the middle, there's this really cool choice node. This was like the most exciting thing when I first saw the talent tree, where the light ammo and heavy ammo. And the intention is basically that you can choose to cap your AoE even lower, but your AoE will do more damage. So you're insane for like 3 to 4 targets.
That's really sick. That's
really cool. But they nerfed it. Like it used to be 25% damage, and now at 10% damage, it's basically never worth running. Even like I think it may be like 1 or 2% better on like 3 to 4 target AoE, which is perfect DPS range for that talent. So I'm a little bit sad that like it feels like this choice node went a bit to waste. And the high target one, light ammo, super cool as well. Just extends your like target cap by 2 targets. I think if it was free, it would be more used as it is right now. Even in Mythic Plus, like we normally capped at 6, right? That is on the high end of the kind of pull sizes you have in Mythic Plus, with a few like exceptions, right? So given that you have to sacrifice the point elsewhere to get it, you never really run light ammo, which is a shame. Okay, so what should Blizzard focus on? Like, if I have to give some feedback, I think like playstyle wise, I don't have that many complaints. There is one issue that I'm not like, I don't feel as gung-ho about this as many others, but on the left side of the class tree, there's Steel Trap. And unfortunately, for most people, this is actually like the meta talent for a lot of situations. And it's basically just this really boring 30-second cooldown trap that you have to throw at the boss's feet or wherever the hitbox happens to be. And that you have to use that on cooldown. And it's strong enough that even in AoE situations in Mythic Plus, you'll probably use it.
Yeah, that's definitely cringe. That is not good.
Yeah, and when the whole MM thing is, as I talked about earlier, about having a few really strong buttons where you really feel each button press, having this like lame 20-second dot that you have to throw at the target's feet feels really bad. So I would love if there was a way for that to like leave the meta in favor of something like Explosive Shot, which is over to the right in a choice node alongside Barrage, or Barrage, I don't know how it's pronounced.
Yeah, both are fine.
That's I guess my main complaint is Steel Trap doesn't really feel like it fits MM, but unfortunately it's quite good for it.
All right, cool. Let's we need to move it along a little bit. So let's just head to survival. I don't know how long you want to spend on survival. Yeah.
So what's changed? It's completely changed if you primarily played survival in Season 3 and Season 4, like pretty much everyone, where it's not so much about the bombs anymore. Now it's much more about your Mongoose Bite / Raptor Strike, which is the button that Blizzard intended for you to be spamming most of the time. So this button, Mongoose Bite, will represent like 50% of your pure single target damage. And it's a talent that's like a little bit down, like just one button. And then like the other buttons that you press around it are basically in service of that button, like generating focus to spam it more. And the tier set bonuses also make it so sometimes you'll just get free ones, and like you're just spamming so much Mongoose Bite, it's unbelievable. But actually, it's okay because you have fun with it. And unlike previous iterations of survival, you're not relying so hard on like extending a cooldown so that you can actually have downtime. You're just, on single target at least, you're just happy spamming your Mongoose Bites all day long and generating focus to cast more of them. So that basically ties into what's good. It's a less degenerate rotation. You're not spamming bombs with reckless abandon. You're pressing a button that's actually designed to be pressed a lot, and it feels more like a design spec rather than like an accident that just springs forth from weird legendary and tier set interactions.
Yeah, definitely.
Another cool thing in the survival tree are the lunge and aspect of the eagle talents. They're kind of in the middle towards the top. And these are basically utility talents, like in the spec tree, and normally that's quite cringe, but you don't have to sacrifice a lot of DPS to get them. So lunge basically extends your melee range by 3 yards. An aspect of the eagle is the ability you know and love, which basically makes you ranged like 15 seconds on a relatively short cooldown.
Yeah, really, really good ability. And that's actually one thing that survival did that very few specs have actually done properly, where they have wanted to have spec-specific things that are not available to the other specs in the spec tree and not have it be really annoying point-wise to actually get them. Like even like Shadow Priest initially was like such a huge problem with this, because like you had to like go and like grab Dispersion and you would have never taken it. But now they're like, okay, well, you're always having this. You're always having Silence.
Yeah.
You're grabbing all your DPS stuff, and like Survival is just another class where they did that well.
Yeah. Yeah, I think this is an example of a success story with that kind of design of the tree and the layout and everything. As for what's bad, bomb damage, which has historically been like 70% of your damage in pretty much every situation, is now quite low. Probably shouldn't be 70% either, but it's currently so low that you're not really excited about pressing the button. Even though you still pick the Wildfire Infusion talent, which like infuses your bombs with all these special effects. It's down towards the left at the bottom third row. That was a cool talent, but now like you kind of like glimpse over it. Like you min-max those effects a bit, but it's not that big of a deal. So cooldown wise, it's also a little bit complicated. Like we actually have 2 big cooldowns in our tree. One called Coordinated Assault, which has been redesigned, and Spearhead. And Spearhead is more of the single target one, and Coordinated Assault is more the cleave one. So, I mean, that's either a good or bad thing, depending on how you look at it. Like, you have a completely different main cooldown, depending on the situation you're in, that do completely different things for your rotation.
That's definitely very, that was very different the first time I ever saw this. That also emphasized using completely different buttons as well. So, like,
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, just very, very different. There's not a lot of classes who have a cooldown setup like that.
Yeah, Coordinated Assault leans itself well to like sustained cleave kind of damage profile, while Spearhead is more like upfront bursty, but it's also relatively flat when you look at the whole graph in a sim or whatever. Like, it's between MM and BM in terms of how bursty it is and how flat it is. But especially on AoE, it's not very AoE bursty, and AoE is especially where you want that kind of burst, right? To like nuke down ads or whatever, clear platforms, whatever it may be.
So BM, MM, and Survival. General, PvE, Mythic Plus, and Raid. Both.
Okay, so BM damage, generally high. It gets stocked a little bit, like especially with the kill cleave change. AoE has now gone up a lot. It used to be a big weakness. So I'd say that's pretty good. The big weakness of BM, at least, unless maybe they fix Call of the Wild, is that like there's just no burst, right? And that can either be in Mythic Plus, I'd say it's quite a big weakness, and that drags it down a bit. But in Raid, it's okay as long as you mentioned, other specs can make up for it. So I'm gonna put that at a high B, but it's gonna be a B. Because it would need some heavy burst to be able to be like an A tier spec or so.
So just high B for BM overall between Raid and Mythic Plus. Okay.
Yeah, MM. So MM is I've talked a pretty good game about it in terms of how it plays and everything, and like its damage profile is strong. But unfortunately, like it's 10% behind BM on single target, and given how much harder it is to maximize it, like I just don't see any reason. And it also has the weakest survivability of all the Hunter specs. So Hunter survivability and utility is a little bit on the weak side. So basically, we got buffed our active survivability, shorter cooldown on Turtle, acceleration, shorter cooldown, and survival of the fittest is now twice as powerful. That's our main DR. We kind of lost some of our passive DR in the Hunter's Mark damage reduction and the Feign Death damage reduction. So at the end of the day, we're kind of where we usually are with survivability, which is one of the weaker, like highest death rate classes in the game. And that also influences these tier list placements in my head a little bit, because you know, if you're not bringing and there's also utility. Sentinel's Owl that we got, not very strong, because the leech effect that you can give only affects your party within the raid, not the whole raid. So we bring almost no useful raid utility and poor survivability, and that affects the rankings. So MM, the damage is just not there. And because of that, I have to make it the first Swamp tier spec.
Boy, all right, let's go.
And that is simply because it has, of the already weak survivability and utility, it is the weakest of the Hunter specs. The damage is so low that it will never be competitive for any form of content. The burst is good, but like it's a very doesn't take long for BM and survival to catch up, like a minute tops. So yeah, that's why it ends up in Swamp tier.
And that's after recent buffs as well. So that's how low
but
they were.
Those buffs were 5%, and they came a week after a 4% nerf. So we're just back where we started, which was pretty bad.
Okay, now we have Survival, the class that everyone played on Gul'dan, and then also during Season 3 and 4 of this expansion, and literally at no other point, and maybe not for a couple more years. Who knows?
So Survival, it's a different thing, because it competes with different spec than MM and BM, right? It competes with the Havocs and the Ferals of the world. And once again, it doesn't bring any utility or survivability, ironically, that those other specs don't bring. So it has to provide some damage. Its single target is good relative to the Hunter specs, but terrible compared to the deep dick dolly dumpsters of the world, like Havoc. So because it doesn't bring any like super strong damage to make up for its deficits, and has no raid utility, which you kind of need, or a raid buff or something to be really nice as a melee spec, I'm gonna put it in C tier, because it needs a niche of some kind to compete with, or at least be picked competitively along with, let's say, Feral.
Yeah, I completely agree. Okay, that is awesome. I do have to get through this. Thank you for being
All good.
detailed.
Thank you for having me.
This is, I mean, seriously, honestly, Hunter is one of the most played classes. I hope that anyone wanting to play Hunter will listen to all of that and be a little bit more, educated on how the classes work, and then also for Blizzard to kind of see some innate problems. You know, I didn't have you on to talk about Hunter previously because of some scheduling issues at the very beginning when they released their trees. So I'm glad to do that. And then again, you guys can follow him on Twitch. He's also, I think you run the Hunter Discord, right? So if you guys if you guys go to the Hunter Discord, one of the better Discords out there for getting good information. So make sure to follow him there. All right, see you, man.
Okay, thanks you. Bye-bye.
Yep, bye. So Surge was going to be here for me today, but Wordup ended up being around. Wordup, who is Enhanced Shaman. How you doing, man?
Yo, I've had better weeks, but I'm doing a lot better now.
Yeah, I was asking if you were doing better. That's good, because I know if anyone was paying attention on Twitter or just like in the WoW community in general, that you had to step away for a bit and thought you might not be back for a while, but you are currently getting all that taken care of. So that's
yeah. It looks like I'll be there just in time.
All right, very, very good to hear. Very good to hear. All right, beautiful. Enhanced. This is a class I've played a lot. I've really enjoyed the design element of it. It's obviously the big nerf recently, but then also kind of like a double buff thing. Don't need to be super technical. Just, how do you like Enhanced's design compared to before, and how do you think they will perform in Season 1?
So like what Purge sent to you, because he's got the most recent details because he's been doing The Sims while I've been away. But design-wise, I think it's like the design is easily I'd say the best designed of like the new talent trees. It makes so much use out of the new design that I think it's, pardon my French, fucking amazing. The problem is I don't think any class really survives a 25% nerf. Any class that gets that's going to hurt a lot, and it really did hurt Enhancement.
Okay.
But like the total design space the customization, all of everything that's going on in it is really good. It is just a tuning issue.
Yeah, they did give them a flat 10% recently as well, but then they also fixed some bugs, which was like kind of like a nerf, but then they like double buff spenders or something like that. Like there's some weird stuff. I think it ended up being like some kind of like a 10% buff recently with all that stuff. So they like kind of went back a little bit halfway. I'm sure Surge knows a little bit more.
From what I understand of the nerfs, since I haven't really been able to play it, but like the mats and everything I've looked at, it's kind of a buff, but it's not nearly enough of a buff as it looks. Because what they nerfed, those were actually really, really powerful bugs. Obviously, you don't want to rely on bugs, but that's a really bad amount of extra damage that you're just losing that counteracts the buff. Yeah, that's like ultimately a pretty dangerous performance issue. But that can be fixed with numbers because the design doesn't need to be changed. Like everything on the tree, the placement, the pathing, like dead on.
Great. Okay, where do you have to rank it? Your guess.
I'd say like because the biggest problems ultimately come down to like not the best at its niche, which is like sustained AoE and low target. Other classes that do way better max AoE are still beating us. So I think you could give it a B, mid to low B for both raids and Mythic Plus, for different reasons. Raids like Wind Fury Totem, end of the day, is good, and the classes that are good, they also like Wind Fury Totem. I know for a fact that they're going to. Mythic Plus Wind Fury Totem's useless, but all of the minor utility that Shaman bring and like a lot of the control and everything like that is insanely useful. Like, it's great for locking it down. It's just that the tuning is off. Like, the gameplay, 10 out of 10. Like, double S tier. It's just tuned down.
I think that pretty much covers it. All right, thank you. I gotta kind of move. But I'm really glad that you are doing better. And I think the enhanced community definitely welcomes, and you're part of multiple other communities, welcome you back. And hopefully you get all that taken care of before Dragonflight.
Yeah, I'm super happy. No problem.
All right,
Have fun with the other ones.
Yep, thank you so much, man. All right, see ya. Hello, Big X. How you doing?
Hello, it's me.
Hello, it is you. All right, so we are talking Mage. Let me get you on here. All specs of Mage, and you are at twitch.tv/Xyronic. Always have been. Perfect.
That's me. All right, quick Mage stuff. Main character of WoW. All right, so real brass tacks. There's really similar things across all three specs. If you liked how the specs played in Shadowlands, they pretty much all play exactly the same way. So starting with Frost, still has Icy Propulsion, still has, all the good stuff that it had in Shadowlands. There's a couple new changes on the talent tree that make Icicles a little bit more valuable. You get a lot more Icicles from Frost Bolting and Flurrying, as well as Ice Lances whenever they're shattered, so Mastery is a little bit more valuable than it was back then, but other than that, it's the same spec. It's generally really good. It's probably one of the only good range specs in Mythic Plus right now for pushing as well, and it probably has some of the best 2-target DPS in the game as well, because you still have Splitting Ice. So I think it's pretty safe to say that it's probably somewhere in the low A tier. Unfortunately, right now, I don't think there's any range specs that are S tier except for maybe like Demo Lock. Moving on to Fire Mage, it's, again, pretty much the same as it was at the end of Shadowlands. If you like Sun King's Blessing, if you like Pyroclasm, if you liked having the 4-set in that last tier of the expansion, all of those are back. Pretty much exactly the same. It's really good. Of course, in the first tier of the expansion, it's going to have less secondary stats, so it might not scale up into the super high tiers. Its single target damage might not quite be there. But there are definitely some nice quality of life changes for Fire Mage that make it pretty nice to play. So Ignite spreading comes from Fire Blast now instead of Phoenix Flames before, which means it's more of a passive Ignite spread spec, which is probably going to scale it into some
that is when Fire Mage in its most recent memory has been at its strongest. Was that interaction, yeah.
Yeah, it was pretty disgusting, and if you look at what Fire Mage is doing on pre-patch right now, it's doing it again. Like it's probably going to be disgusting again when we get to the later tiers of the expansion. But for the first tiers, it's hard to say. Now there is a big caveat for Fire Mage. Cauterize is on the talent tree, and it is a damage loss to talent into Cauterize. But I think it's one of those things, and you probably agree with me on this, that if you have a cheat death available to you and you don't take it, you are hard griefing your raid. I guarantee you this entire expansion, not even just the first tier, this entire expansion, the amount of Fire Mages that are going to be dead on the floor because they don't have Cauterize,
they don't have Soul Shape,
they don't have Pod Tender anymore.
Pod Tender. A lot of classes are going to have a rude awakening to not having Pod Tender and Soul Shape for sure. But Fire Mage, yeah. So the thing is the other classes that lose damage by selecting utility in their spec tree is mainly Moonkin and Havoc Demon Hunter that lose the most to select the things that they need. The thing is what they're picking between is Fell Eruption, Netherwalk, and Solar Beam. Netherwalk, very good. Solar Beam, very good in the right scenario. Fell Eruption, way less useful, but certainly good. You are picking between Cauterize, which is like, I mean, you can't put a value on Cheat Death. Like, literally, a class with a Cheat Death and actually nothing else, at least in a raid environment, would be more tanky than, like, like technically more tanky than like a class with a ton of defensives. Like that's how broken Cheat Death is. So you do have to spend a point in it. You do lose damage. Hopefully it isn't 5% plus, because it would be super weird to see a bunch of mages running around without Cauterize. You do not want to see what that looks like.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So again, I think it's going to be one of those low A tier classes. It's still, I mean, it's Mage, right? It's still going to have Bloodlust. It's still going to have Arcane Intellect. You're always going to have a Mage in your raid, regardless of whether or not it's good. But I think it actually is pretty good right now. And again, the passive Ignite benefits are definitely there. And then Arcane, it's definitely the spec I am not the most comfortable with. I've played it a lot, but I think I'm definitely better at Frost and Fire. But as a general, state of mind, it is essentially the exact same spec. You still have Arcane Harmony. You still have your Kyrian ability. They changed the major cooldown. Like, it's Arcane Surge now, but it's like pretty much the same thing. It's still just a button that you press before Touch of the Magi in your other abilities. Like, it's still the same spec. It's going to be a weird spec to put on the tier list because it doesn't have great AoE. It has good cleave, especially if you can make use of like the 45-second burst cooldowns. I could see it maybe being like really good on a fight like Broodmother, but it doesn't do that damage all the time, so it's really hard to place. This is probably the weakest of the 3 mage specs in my opinion, so I'd probably put it in like C or D tier. We don't have a spec in D tier. Let's put it in D tier. I think that's a good place to put it. General mage utility across the board is good. I covered the 3 specs, but I didn't cover like the basic talent tree, right? All 3 specs have greater invis now. All 3 specs have blast wave. All 3 specs have dragon's breath. All 3 specs have lustring, so you can double lust.
All 3 specs having greater invis is so insane.
It's really, really good in
It's
general.
so good. Yeah.
So I think like mage is in a good spot overall.
All right, amen. That sounds good. All right, thank you for the time. Thank you for being quick and concise. I appreciate your time. See you, bud.
Later.
All right, calling Kalamazi. All right, all 3 specs of Warlock. Just the idea of like what Zyro did would be ideal. Yeah, it's speed run, but also concise. Like if you feel like you want to say something, don't feel like you're rushed.
My kind of speed run is too fast for you, so that's okay. No, I mean, like similar to what Zyro said, all 3 Warlock specs, if you played them in Shadowlands, they're essentially the same thing. All 3 got a few new talents here and there that change things a little bit, but for the most part, Destro's still casting Chaos Bolts, Incinerates, Conflagrates, Af's still putting up dots, Malefic Rapture is still a thing, and Demonology is still summoning pets, like imps and dogs and things. All 3 Warlock specs have had a lot of like tuning and bugs for a while. It's hard to say, is there a certain spec you want to start on, or is it just like...
You can start wherever you want. Yeah.
So Demo in raid testing was pretty mediocre for the vast majority of it, and that was because Fellstorm and Demonic Shrine were bugged since literal day 1 of alpha. They got fixed last week, so that's one of the reasons why you've seen Demo jump a very large amount in Mythic Plus, because they've been adding bonuses to Fellstorm, like multiple talents, a tier bonus buffs it, and it was bugged since day 1. It was fixed last week, so now it's doing a lot more damage in AoE. Our single target jumped a good bit. In addition to they shipped a bunch of buffs to Demo basically the same week. So you've seen Demo jump from like probably being C tier to like in Mythic Plus, certainly A tier. Rating wise, it's a bit awkward. Like, so Pit Lord's doing a lot of damage via Nether Portal, which is like a hit or miss talent. People like it and hate it. It sort of feels like how like Army does, I guess, for DK in a sense, where like there's a lot of power behind that cooldown, so you want to amp it with like PIs and big int effects and all the big stamina effects. So for like Mythic Plus, it's probably an A tier for Demo. Rating, it's probably B tier, I'd say. Pit Lord is good, relatively narrow though in certain spots. The spec's sort of customizable though, because you can have big cleave or like single target focus. So I'd probably put like, if there's literally a rank between A and B, which there's not, that's where Demo
We're
goes.
gonna do low A.
That's probably what I'd do. Destruction's sort of similar. I put Destro overall in B tier. It's probably in Mythic Plus the best single target spec you can play out of all 3, unless you're playing sort of like a niche build of Demo. It has good single target in the raid, good 2-target cleave with Havoc and all that, good AoE, but it just feels like nothing is like super strong about it. It's just solid at what it does, but it's not incredibly flashy, unless you're in like a really niche setting for it. Like Korog Grim Totem was a good Destro fight, for example. But it feels fine at B. You have you have access to your 2-piece and 4-piece from S3 and 4 that we saw in Shadowlands, but it's a nerfed version of that. So Destro looks fine-ish. It got buffed a couple weeks ago, like a month ago roughly, and it put it in a solid B tier. It'll be played in a few fights in the raid. Mythic Plus is a solid middle ground, but it's not like an A tier or something you bring to like every Mythic Plus kind of setting.
Definitely.
And then Affliction is I mean, Affliction is just not good at anything really. It's sort of like it's not the best at single target, not the best at AoE. It's still playing Malefic Rapture. It's
Siphon Life still exists.
Yeah, I'd probably put it like high D, low C.
High D, low C. Which one?
Probably. Yeah. See, and chat saying question mark. Chat has no idea.
Dude, chat has such.
Okay, I got this because
chat has such deep-rooted hatred for Warlock failures. It's down to their core.
I mean, Affliction Lock is giga busted in pre-patch, but that's Chaotic Motes and Soul Flame, which is not a thing anymore, or it won't be a thing in Dragonflight. But I mean, yeah, Afflock's busted in pre-patch. Are you kidding me? But it's probably like low C, high D. Its single target is not as good as Destro or Demo. Its AoE just got nerfed, which is still okay. It's good in niche settings like Primal Council, like stacked, seed, cleave, and all that kind of stuff. But you don't really see that a whole lot. I mean, at times in plus, but its single target is terrible. You choose either AoE or single target. It's not really a good hybrid build of either. So you're sort of limited in what you can do. It needs buffs, essentially. Destro got buffed considerably. Demo got buffed considerably. Af didn't get anything at all, and they were all the same previously. So I'm hoping buffs come, but at this point, it's like a weird. Probably not going to play it in nearly any setting.
Yeah, as the weeks go on, the likelihood of something being buffed or nerfed by 50 and 25% is very low.
Yeah,
right? Like those numbers week on week go lower and lower, most likely. All right, I think that makes a lot of sense. Thank you for your time. All right, make sure to go follow him on his stream. All right, see you, bud.
See you.
All right, I think we're going to do Rogue next. Yeah, okay. So for all of you guys, love talking to Rogues. I think a lot of you guys got some design things this expansion a little bit better. Again, it does have to be a little quick, but also if you feel like you have something important to say, don't feel too rushed. Each one of you, I don't care which one. Actually, let's just start with Assassination first with Whispyr. How do you feel about Assassination's design and power level in this expansion?
Yeah, so Assassination is looking kind of giga sick. We're getting a much stronger cooldown in our 2-minute cooldown. So Vendetta got replaced with Deathmark, and that's looking like a really, really powerful 2-minute cooldown. It also has interactions with a 1-minute cooldown further down the tree with Kingsbane. And so we're getting a lot of kind of on-demand bursts. Single target's really, really strong. We recently got a buff to our Execute as well, so that's looking super good.
Mm-hmm.
And even in Mythic Plus, we now have a cooldown, 1-minute cooldown with Indiscriminate Carnage, which really helps our AoE, which has always been sort of the downside of Assassination is that the AoE doesn't keep up. So,
and the Shroud of Suffocation changed. Such a nice quality of life, too.
Oh, yeah. The quality of life from Shrouded on the extra combo points is huge and something a lot of people missed from BFA. So, I'm personally putting Assassination at S tier. But I do think there are some issues. Like, for example, there's a passive called Vicious Venoms, which is just an ambush and mutilate buffer. But it's a 2-pointer. And so you actually skip it in single target and take a Fan of Knives talent, which is a 1-pointer.
Oh, super weird. Yeah, it's good you brought that up.
And that's, yeah, it's kind of cringe. Also, Exsanguinate is a very divisive talent that a lot of people hate, or some people love. And you take it everywhere, including in Mythic Plus. Like, without question, it's so good. So that could be a turnoff for some people if you don't like Exsanguinate. Sorry, it's
yeah,
here.
Exsanguinate is one of those less talked about things that's just like breath and momentum and just all those things where, like, it's just a button that is really interesting and different, but it turns off a lot of people to the spec. That's definitely a good shout.
Yeah, it's a couple % ahead of anything else. So it's pretty strong.
Sweet.
You can definitely like play without it, but it's hard.
Okay, moving on to and thank you, Whispyr, for that. Moving on to Outlaw Rogue, which I believe is Foreverguy. What's up, Foreverguy? We have never spoken before. Nice to meet you.
Yeah, nice to meet you too, man.
Yeah. All right, cool. So what is how do you feel about Outlaw in Dragonflight?
So from like a power perspective, it feels pretty strong. A lot of the encounter design in Raid feels pretty cleave heavy, and Outlaw having just brain dead access to, just press Blade Flurry, do damage, don't have to think too hard compared to like Assassination that has to, multi-dot, or even other specs that have to, complicate the rotation for no reason. And then just from like a design perspective with the talent trees, I think it's pretty fantastic where there's already been like a lot of discovery in like some of the theory crafting stuff that we do internally where, originally we were like, oh, these talents are auto pick and they're required and, they need to buff the terrible talents. And then like a week has passed and now, people are finding builds that don't even go, Dreadblades, which people, have been consistently saying is, way too good. But now there's builds that don't even go Dreadblades for Mythic Plus. There's also a lot of cute things that you can do where you can choose to sacrifice utility for increased damage. Obviously that's something that's like fun for me for farm where it's like, oh, I can drop grapple and think a little bit smarter with my mobility and just rely on Shadow Step. and then get a few extra percent points for damage. Other than that, it plays pretty similarly to how it does now at a core level. It's really high APM. It's got a lot of buttons. It's really fast. Yeah, I think
can
it's
hit
pretty
from
fantastic.
range a little bit. Yeah, super versatile spec. All right, what do you think? PvE, all PvE, Mythic Plus, Raid, all of it. Outlaw Rogue.
I would say like low S, high A. It kind of depends on how you define the terms, but that's like kind of where I would put it. It's
Dude,
like
earlier today I would have been like, well, it's kind of both, because like the tier list was trending high earlier, and then we brought in a few people that made it trend low. So I actually don't know. I don't have any advice on where it should be.
Yeah. Just put it in low S. People are going to be upset no matter what, but it feels like it's going to be a pretty strong raid spec in like some fights. Like some of the single target encounters, you're probably going to go assassination, and then there's a lot of like just like garbage nonsense cleave that Outlaw's going to excel at.
Yeah, it's also really hard to tell too, because in chat, basically no one outside of the very, very top guilds has done like a ton of like research into what exactly is going to be good in raid. You guys are going off of super anecdotal like raid testing logs that have been mostly completely irrelevant and have been majorly changed since then. And you guys are like just being real. Like chat is almost exclusively thinking Mythic Plus, and it's obvious why. It's the only thing that you can actually do and see on beta frequently to get better information. So like, but this is raid and Mythic Plus. It's both for the sake of time, right? It could be more accurate to do one at a time, but like, when you guys see people rating things higher, I feel like a lot of initial doom and stuff is definitely referring to the you're being heavily Mythic Plus biased. But thank you for that. Yeah,
I think like another thing that like kind of complicates it is that like, at least for like us, like that we do all like the rogue theory crafting stuff, we have like a pretty like strict like regimen in regards to like finding like random details and then like implementing it like incessantly. And there's some specs like like Warlock that are a little bit underdeveloped by comparison, which makes it like hard to look at like a sim number and be like, oh, this is like exceptional, when some of the other classes that might be even higher in practice we don't actually like know in the data.
Okay, 1 second. I had to ban a bunch of people in chat being assholes. No, dude, thank you for.
Oh, sorry.
No, seriously,
my
it's
bad.
all good. Thank you for that. That was really informative. Okay, last one. We have Subtlety Rogue with Foo.
Hello.
Hello, Foo.
So, sub didn't change that significantly from other other iterations. Like it is still the same to the core, but there is some new nuances in the tree. Like you can now skip Shadowlands, what was discovered like really recently as a damage gain, what is super interesting. It also comes with an interesting gameplay change that basically means using everything on cooldown, what is a bit of a bummer, but I assume this will get adjusted so that we can take like more double dance and
like to take like more bursty things instead of just like kind of hitting everything on cooldown, have like more of a profile. Okay.
The profile in general changed a bit. Like we're now a lot burstier with a lot more focus on Shadowlands. This comes with a big upside. That Shadowlands is a lot more important, but also with the downside that like every other cooldown got reduced, got a bit weaker. I think in general, like the direction is really good. The spec feels good, and new talents like the shadow damage amps and other damage amps do to a degree compensate for niches where we lagged before. Like 2-target, 3-target cleave was one of the worst things in Word for the spec, and we are now like decent or at least good in that regard. I think the biggest problem sub at the moment has is like the other two specs. Like Assassination is currently like 9-10% above sub in single target. It just blasts. And for AoE and Mythic Blast, like Outlaw is super dominant. It's like wow.
And I think the design for sub and AoE got like a bit of a buff from last expansion, right? Like it seems like they gave them more tools to do better in AoE. So definitely would have liked to see more from there. Okay, so if you had to kind of combine them together, it's behind Assassination and Raid by a bit. It's behind an Outlaw and Mythic Plus in your estimation by a bit. Where do you think it ranks kind of in the grand scheme of things?
I would say somewhere A or B, but bit more towards speed because like the damage is not there yet.
That's fine. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, and again, especially Foreverguy and Foo for coming on and I haven't talked to you guys yet. I would love to talk to you guys about rogue stuff in the future. It seems like you guys really care about the specs you play for sure. I always talk to James, but obviously I can't talk to James anywhere around the raid, and I always love having more perspective. So seriously, thank you for coming on. So yeah, I have to jet to the other classes, but I'm always debating on whether to play my rogue for the expansion. So this is definitely helping me as well. All right, thank you. I feel
like everybody always is like, I'm gonna play rogue this expansion, then they never do.
Well, okay. Now I feel bad because I'll yeah. Okay. Yeah. All right. I'll see you guys later.
Peace, man.
Yeah, well, bye. Long time no talk. The last time we talked about Windwalker stuff, you were like doing it mid-vacation. And there's been a lot of changes since then. It's been a class I've played a ton on the beta. It is, in my opinion, the best designed spec in any MMO. That's something I keep on saying. That's obviously my opinion. I just fucking love Windwalker. I like a lot of the changes they made to the tree. But about its power level and stuff, and obviously your opinions on the design, I'd love to hear those. It has to keep it somewhat truncated, but if you feel like you want to talk about anything, you can.
No, that's fine. Yeah, I mean, I agree. I mean, obviously, I've not, diversified my experience as much as you have, but I think Windwalker right now is designed really, really well. I think, a lot of things, there are certain things that are kind of annoying from a guide writer and a theory crafter perspective, being that there's quite a few, different talent builds and stuff that people can play around with. But I think from a player perspective, it's really, really nice. I think, people are kind of have some of that freedom. And I've been really surprised that, most of the people that pop into Discord and stuff are not kind of looking, sticking or adhering to just one. All right, this one is the mathematically best, talent setup and play style. And people are kind of experimenting and, finding that they can play a lot of, or at least close to what they'd like to and still be really successful.
Yeah.
Obviously, especially in Mythic Plus, where Windwalker is still very, very strong, and that AoE damage is still there. I think it's easier, especially for newer players that, Mark of the Crane is still there, but it's a lot easier to maintain, with Storm, Earth, and Fire, but then also with shadowboxing treads and stuff. It's been a very positive change to help people, new players especially, kind of acclimate to, what is, or, typically can be a very difficult to kind of understand and master spec. So I think that's been really positive overall. I've been really happy with that. From that aspect, from a community perspective, I think maybe most of all, I think we're getting a lot of new people that are checking it out, obviously, because it's super strong. I mean, even after pretty sizable nerfs, I think comfortably say that they were rather large. Even after that, I think a lot of people are still kind of finding the class is still very strong. I mean, I wrote about it on Wowhead. I wrote about it on Peak. The nerfs were relatively targeted and did a good job of accomplishing the goal, and Blizzard was they put out some of the notes of what they were trying to accomplish there. So I think it was really really positive, and looking into Dragonflight, things should kind of just stay the way they are now but get better in pretty much every way, and should be a real positive spec for people to pick up and should be strong, and especially in Mythic Plus, obviously, and AoE situations. But I think there's a lot of potential for single target and raid value as well. Certainly a situation where if you want to play Windwalker, I'd say it's very unlikely, looking at the tools and the way things are set up now and what's coming with tier sets and additional talent points and stuff, that Windwalker is going to be detrimental on a single target fight, as it has been at certain times in the more even very recent past.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, overall, I think I'm happy that a lot of people are kind of seeing that quality, and I think there was a lot of concern over things, going into it, and the kind of the decisions that Blizzard was making. And so far, I think most people are finding it pretty, good.
Yeah, definitely good. I wish they could do more about differentiating Mythic Plus and AoE, because Windwalker's issue, like you said, for so long was they were so strong in Cleave that it was impossible to make them good for raid. You even, like Monk's probably biggest advocate, were playing different specs because you felt like you just didn't have the same value to the raid, right? The talent tree should fundamentally fix that problem, right? Because you should be able to talent into those things for a Cleave fight, or some of them or all of them, and then on single target you gain real single target stuff. That stuff at its core is in the tree. It's just maybe it's not powerful enough to really purely differentiate the two on a large level. And yeah, so overall though, what do you think about Windwalker in general? Just if you had to combine the two for Mythic Plus and Raid.
I mean, I looking for like a tier ranking, right? So that's what we're doing.
That's the idea, but it's just your opinion. It can be at any level. I've had people trend high with their rankings and trend low. It's just whatever you think.
Yeah, and kind of, knowing that you messaged me last night, and then kind of seeing people talk about, what was going on, and I was doing the dishes and starting to get dinner ready, so you caught me at a good time. But
okay,
yeah,
thank God.
I would. No, you're fine. Yeah, I would say, Windwalker is pretty solidly A. I think single target, probably holds back a little bit from really hitting up into that, A+ or S ranking.
Okay.
But
people in chat are gonna get mad, but like I promise you, just when you guys are like going off of rankings and stuff, not to say that they're right or wrong or anything like that. It's just you're definitely thinking almost entirely about Mythic Plus, and that's not what this list is, right? Like you have to consider single target.
Yeah, like I would say right now, like looking at including tier bonuses, like a lot of people, where the tier bonuses are going to be really beneficial for Windwalker and single target and Raid. The extra talent points will let us kind of pick up rising kicks, which will be more single target. But yeah, I mean, there's definitely, because Windwalker has, for so long, been really strong in Mythic Plus, I think it's very hard not to just be, kind of a meatball and forget that there's other, that there's Raid stuff. But I think, Mythic Plus, Windwalker probably is up into that, high A+ or S tier. I don't know what we're comparing it to, but just kind of
yeah, it's almost impossible because like one of the first people to go was DK, right? And they like rated like they were trending high, the first DPS spec we ranked. So they ranked, Frost in A and Unholy in S. But then like now everyone else is kind of going off of they have a big broader perspective of the overall. That's why every tier list is a meme, and this is the part that really doesn't matter. What really matters is what you said before you ranked it, which is kind of the point.
So
of
I mean,
all this,
I think like Mythic Plus, probably would be that S. I think there's a lot of the utility and stuff in the class tree that'll be really nice to have. Not game breaking, but just kind of nice things. And I think Windwalker right now is probably like a B, maybe a low B in terms of Raid, or maybe specifically single target. If you look at a fight like Pantheon right now, Windwalker is really, really strong because it's basically sustained Mythic Plus. But I think with tier bonuses, with the additional talent points, Windwalker will probably eke up into that A- area for single target, and that will, averaging them out, I think Windwalker would be a pretty solid A.
Sure. Okay. Sounds good. I'll leave it right up here. That's all I think I have the time for. But again, always thank you for that. And if you guys want to ever follow him, he streams on Twitch. He's also huge in any Monk Discord or website or anything like that. He's the guy to go to for this kind of stuff. Really love listening to your writing about Windwalker specifically. I think it's very eloquent and always good about speaking at the spec. And you're someone who you have to keep it short because and from a passion level, you can talk about this for days, right? So
we could be at it.
And would definitely look forward to doing that with you at some point for sure. Yeah. Oh, I said listening to your writing. Okay, reading your writing. You know that. You know what I mean.
Well, I mean, I stream while I write most of the time too. So I mean, you can listen to me.
True. Okay, so I wasn't wrong. Beautiful.
No, you're not wrong. But yeah, I mean, tonight actually will be the first Raid back full time as Windwalker. I've finally.
Awesome. That's what I wanted to hear. Yeah, because you had played Feral for a while. So.
Yep.
Awesome.
Yeah, so
even though Feral also got hugely good changes.
Oh yeah.
All right.
And it's not a knock on Feral. It's just that Windwalker, like you said, is looking great.
All right. Awesome. Thanks for talking to me, man.
Thanks, Max.
All right. See ya. Bye. All right, calling Critcake for Warrior. So just your general ideas on Furious Arms. We'll start with Arms for design, how it feels in this expansion, and what you think their general power level is in Mythic Plus and Raid.
Yeah, sure. So I think Arms is more fun to play in DF than it is in Shadowlands for sure. Rage Gen is actually very high. You always have buttons to press, but the Rage Gen is so high that because you have that much rage, anytime you press Overpower, you're not actually spending rage. So you're not working towards Test of Might or anger management. So it feels like we need a better way to dump rage so that Overpower sees more use. Something like a higher cost filler maybe, or as much as it sucks to say, another slight rage gen nerf, or maybe make Overpower proc less often so that you use more GCDs on actually spending rage, but make Overpower stronger in return in some way. They could even give us an off GCD rage spender, but I don't think that's going to happen. I would love to see Heroic Strike, or Focus Rage, or even Ignore Pain back, but it is what it is. And they brought back a real execute phase through Juggernaut. It feels really good now. In Shadowlands, our execute was non-existent. In DF, it feels really, really good, really powerful. We also get bleeds. It's not going to be as good as, say, BFA, where most of our damage was through bleeds, but it's definitely adding a healthy amount of damage to your overall DPS. You also get Tested Might and Executioner's Precision, but
love
they
having
aren't
that
as strong as they used to be back.
I still love
So
having them
they-
back as
yeah.
a gameplay thing, though. Yeah.
ARM's single target DPS is kind of mid at best at the moment. They've changed ARMS recently a little bit, where they shifted some of our execute damage into non-execute because our non-execute damage kind of felt non-existent, and so that was a good change. I think they could buff, because we are sort of slightly below mid. They could buff Mortal Strike further, either through just buffing Mortal Strike itself or martial prowess, and they could definitely buff Executioner's Precision. It's really weak at the moment at 30% per stack. To put it into perspective, in Legion, Executioner's Precision was 75% per stack. I think 75% would be ludicrous at this point, but 50% sounds good to me.
Okay. All right. So ARMS, just generally, where do you put it?
So mid DPS, single target, AoE is pretty good. Defensives, okay. It does bring rally, it does bring battle shout, but because the single target is kind of mid, I think I'd put it in B.
Okay, mid B. Okay, and then what about Fury?
Fury hasn't changed a whole lot. It's just improved on what works, and I'm really, really happy with how it plays right now. You can invest points into Bloodthirst or Raging Blow, and Bloodthirst brings back Hold, Steal, Hot Blood from BFA, which is great for cleave and self-healing. And Raging Blow is more single target focused, but both can be used in both situations just fine. Whatever you play, it feels fast and fun. It's really intuitive, and there's always a button to press. In my opinion, it's one of the best iterations of Fury in a long time.
Oh, hell yeah.
The burst feels really good. You have Ravager, you have Odin's Fury, you have Avatar, Recklessness. Yeah, you just stack all of that and you do insane AoE DPS burst. Of course, your consistent isn't as high in return, but it just feels really good.
Okay.
Fury is also super tanky with its self-heals. It has Warpaint for 10% permanent DR pretty much. You have defensive stance as well. If you use that properly, that's really, really helpful. You have Impending Victory for self-heal, you have Enraged Regen for self-heal, and you have Cold Steel Hot Blood as well, which heals even more. So it's just insane how much damage Fury can take and still survive.
Yeah, very, very endemic to the Warrior brand. The super strong heal through all damage. All right, cool. Fury, Mythic Plus, and Raid combined.
I put in A tier.
A, mid A. Okay.
Yeah.
Beautiful. All right, excellent, dude. I love talking with you. Really liked having the conversations with you and Dan. Obviously, can't talk to Dan now because the race is coming up. Definitely look forward to talking to you more in the future, probably after the first raid is over, just going over like how Warrior is currently doing at the moment. But always appreciate our conversations. And if you guys want to follow him, it is Critcake EU, right? So it has 2 E's. I hope it looks weird. I just hope I didn't like spell that wrong. It's not like Critcake with a U on the end. That's correct for your stream?
No, that's right. Yeah, you
That
spelled
is
it
right?
right there.
Perfect. Okay, great. So you guys can follow him there for Warrior. DPS Warrior stuff, does a lot of Mythic Plus. Thanks, man.
Thank you.
Yep. All right, bye-bye. Let's call Bolas real quick for Ret. Hey, Bolas, what's up?
Hello.
Okay, so general ideas of Ret going from last expansion to this one. Not insanely long, but also if you feel like you need to talk about something, that's fine. And then a general ranking of how you feel they're performing at the moment, and that's it.
Yeah, I was watching the rest of the classes, and I was like listening to everyone going like, "Oh man, you know, my spec got so much cool stuff going into Dragonflight, like all these great changes," and I'm like, "Fuck!" I was getting riled up, like thinking about how shit they treated Red. It's
no.
Yeah, there's like basically nothing positive I can say about it. Like all the design decisions and everything they've made has just been awful. There's the rotation doesn't feel fun to play. It's super bloated and stagnant. Your defensives and mobility are both like among the worst out of any melee. You don't bring anything like that's really valuable to a raid setting. I don't really see a reason why anyone would want to play raid.
The most scathing review of any class all day. So maybe something for Blizzard to look out for.
They just really need like to rework it ASAP. As like in my opinion. I mean, maybe they think differently, but yeah,
I definitely think Ret was definitely one of the later Paladin was one of the later trees released and needed the most work for the most amount of time. And I just think they were just one of the few. I think most of the talent trees in this game are actually great, as you heard most of these people talking about them. And the gameplay is great. There were a few specs left behind that are kind of like looking forward to 10.1, unfortunately, because they just had to move on to the tuning part. And this Ret definitely seems like one of them for sure. That being said, you had an excellent note in your article about Ret that I'll paraphrase, which is that's not necessarily saying that Ret will be bad if it has not great design. A really great designed spec can not do good damage due to RNG lottery tuning. And then a really bad class, like literally pressing one button ever, like the worst possible scenario, you could do top damage, right? Like it doesn't really mean that your tuning will be good. So how do you feel about the tuning of red currently?
I don't have a great grasp on what other classes' numbers are like for Raid. My impression was that red was quite good early on in the beta, and then it got some pretty massive nerfs, and there was like a bug fix where there was a consecration talent that was increasing all your holy damage by 10%. They got bug fixed after they nerfed it, so it's like kind of got over nerfed more than what they were intending originally. So my impression is still that it's like not above average for DPS, but if it does end up overtuned, you might still see people play ret because damage is damage. But like I don't think it's very likely to happen that it ends up being overtuned based on what I currently see. I mean, maybe they buff it. But...
Yeah, sure. What is your opinion on their, like, if you had to put it anywhere, combining both of them?
Like in ranking?
Mm-hmm.
Swamp Ass.
You think red Swamp Ass?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, now at least no tier is alone by themselves. Wow, yeah, that is wild. All right, so
I mean, like you look at other specs, there's times where fucking like survival or enhancement or whatever, like, they're actually good in raid, but raid's just never good in raid. There's like not a single tier since like a Wrath Thrower is actually good.
Yeah, okay.
Like actually fought him.
Yeah. All right, well, I think that's about it. I need to move on to Shadow and Ellie, but thank you again for coming on, and probably talk again after the first raid is over, seeing how things are going. All right. Nice talking to you, man. Yep.
Yeah.
All right. Bye-bye. Hello.
Yo, what's up, man?
Hey, probably the person I've talked to maybe more than anyone else the last couple months leading up to this with how much has been changed with Shadow Priest. So again, obviously I have to keep it somewhat brief. We've had much longer conversations. Not too much of that has changed since then. Perfect. Okay. What do you think?
All right. So hopefully not too long, but so just to start off, so Shadow is basically just an unfinished spec with too many ideas going on that just don't play off of each other or interact well, at all. It's kind of just plays like an amalgamation of every version of Priest since MOP, and it's basically chaos incarnate. Is how I would describe it. So S tier for sucks balls swamp ass.
What? Wait, I'm so confused. We just went all over the place.
So it's got a lot of issues. So just to talk about them briefly, I think Shadow was given, a new cooldown in Dragonflight with Dark Ascension. We also got a brand new filler spell with Mind Spike. Neither of these are fully fleshed out or like make sense with the spec. I think individually they could work, but they're just kind of unfinished blob buttons. So and just kind of lacking identity with the spec. So it's really hard to kind of put it on a ranking system just because of that. It's just like it's clear they weren't done with their ideas, which makes it really hard to kind of pinpoint where they want the spec to go in the future. And just in general, like nothing makes sense. A lot of negative synergy with things. And, the big thing I want to mention, they talked a lot in Blue Posts about Shadow Priest AoE. They attempted to fix Shadow Priest AoE. I would actually say they managed to kneecap its AoE before it even went live. It's actually harder to spread your dots as a Shadow Priest now, especially like Shadow Word Pain specifically in Dragonflight. They added some cool new AoE talents, but they literally nerfed them to the ground before the spec even went live. So we don't have a whole lot playing with it in AoE. There's like one talent that's making it somewhat passable in AoE right now. It's just a really horrible spot to be in, personally. So yeah, talent placement's still rough. There's a ton of bugs that make it really hard to evaluate things still. Capstone talents are really bland and all kind of have the same damage pattern. Which is really sad because I was really excited about them when they first got announced. And we still don't have any movement, like displacement button, which is really sad. With all that said, I can talk about this for days, but to kind of keep it short, the damage is fine. Like you'll be able to bring Shadow to raids and keys and, feel like you're contributing and it's passable. My main points are that, the gameplay state of the spec is just disappointing considering what it could have been. With that in mind, I would say swamp ass design, but C tier damage is kind of where we're at.
Okay, sure. Yeah, I mean, this thing is purely about like the damage value part. So yeah. Definitely important to mention that. I also think something to keep in mind with Shadow, just for the whole expansion, is I think it's gonna be really hard for Blizzard to tune it because
absolutely
it's just a class that gives themselves PI and gives someone else PI at the same time. PI is very powerful, and it's going to be weird where Shadow Priest, if they want to tune them properly, need to be on the lower end of damage because they're bringing that value. Or Blizzard could alternatively mess up and make them really strong single target on their own, and then they're just by far the best DPS you could bring to any encounter. This has been the design issue with PI for a long time. Definitely, I think design takes a big hit in this too, because I wish I could show it actually. There's like an Icy Veins, like like 2 target rotation meme screenshot where it like shows like all the things that to keep track of. It's like actually insane. It's like what?
Don't make fun of my guide. Oh,
yeah,
no.
yeah.
I mean, yeah, but there's so much going on, and that's why it's so hard, because if you give anyone the spec, they won't be able to figure it out. It just doesn't make sense. Like on paper, you won't know like when to push what without looking at a sim, and it's a really sad spot to be in. Like you want things to be intuitive. Like you don't want to have to ask me or someone in the Discord like, hey, which talent is better, because it's literally just a numbers thing, right? So yeah, just disappointing. But yeah, to your point, Twins of the Sun Priestess is arguably the best raid utility button you can really bring. So it's like it's hard to put it on a spectrum when something like that exists. You still have a lot of off healing. That's actually gotten significantly better in Dragonflight, so at least there's that. But yeah, it's going to be kind of a roller coaster of an expansion, is what it feels like.
All right, thank you for your time.
Yeah,
Always a pleasure talking. See ya. Okay, anyways, calling Petko.
So what do you want to know?
You play a bit of Ellie Shaman, yeah?
Just a little bit, yeah.
Just a little bit? All right, cool. So basically, just a quick thought on the design of Ellie Shaman from where it was to where it is now, and then just a general idea on the power level rankings of the class.
Okay, I think design-wise, we are likely one of the best when it comes down to talent representation. Pure strength power, we were, I would say, mediocre previously, and since the buffs, the past couple of days, we actually became pretty good, specifically for Mythic Plus. Outside of raw damage and raiding, we don't really bring anything else, unless you count Wind Rush Totem. We don't have a raid utility, which makes us kind of weak, and we're unlikely to be seen in raiding, at least not in a competitive raiding, unless we do a lot more damage than we do right now, and I don't think that's going to be the case. So I'm already going to count us out for competitive raiding, but Mythic Plus is an interesting scene, I would say. We're looking a lot better, specifically our AoE damage, consistent damage. So I'm very happy how we're turning out. I think Blizzard, especially this, have listened to feedback, and I would say from 1 to 10 happy, around 8.5 on a good day. Design-wise, a lot better, I would say.
Yeah, I love it. I think it's so good. It was actually really unfortunate because like initially when they released the trees, they were it was like insanely fun to look at them, like extending ascendance and the mountains will fall, and that entire bottom right part of the tree with funnel and flame shock stuff. It just seemed awesome. And then they nerfed their spenders by so much that all of that Maelstrom gain didn't matter. And it was super down bad for so long. And then that most recent change makes definitely that new choice node they added under Primordial Wave feel super fucking nice to play. They made the flame shock stuff feel way better. It's definitely like the feel of the class to me is excellent. It's one of my favorite classes to play.
Definitely.
But, yeah. So I definitely hard agree with you there.
Yeah, I would say like before the buff to Lava Burst right now, the build was kind of a bit wonky because you were casting Elemental Blast on single target even though you had Ecos, which is not really what you want to have. But right now, with this current build, I like it a lot better because you are pretty much flame shocking everything and lava bursts are flying out left and right. It just looks and visually pleasant to play, feels strong. I'm really digging it, specifically Mythic Plus. Rate-wise, I would say there might be more experienced shamans out there to give the opinion. I myself, not really a big fan of rating. I think the lack of utility definitely hurt us. If, for example, they add something like Sky Fury Totem, gives us like 3% spell crit to like the whole party, then that would be pretty good. But we don't have that, and just having pure damage is not enough to put us in a competitive rankings for rating. Mythic Plus, definitely strong. So if I gotta rank it for Mythic Plus, I would say like anywhere around lower A, definitely.
Okay.
Damage-wise, in the whole kind of package utility, lower A I would say is pretty good. Not better than Lock for sure, but definitely there.
Okay, sure. And then for rating, you would have it lower than that?
Rating, I'm going to say likely upper B, around B area. So...
Okay, so you have to choose between low A or high B, basically.
Okay, I'm going to put it high B 100%.
Okay, that sounds good.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, we have not talked before, but I actually really appreciated that. Thanks for stepping in at the last second. I don't have a lot of... I love talking to Chilldrill about Ellie, but I just can't talk to him right now about that, and I just really appreciate having people with high level experience be able to come in and talk. So definitely huge thanks for that. Probably gonna head out and end this. So yeah, thank you.
Yep, absolutely. Thank you.
Yep,
Have a good one.
Yep.
Bye bye.
But here's the thing: the end thing didn't matter. I'm gonna reiterate this again. The point of this and the entire bit of actual content was you guys hearing from people about what they think about what it was like to play the spec before versus how it's playing now. Huge emphasis on design. And then at the end, more of a for fun thing, it is a how do you feel about the class? It's always going to be a meme. Tier lists are always a meme. They're just shitty and good for content. Who cares, right? You have people that are ranking them. People at the beginning have such a less chance of ranking them correctly than people at the end, because people at the end see the whole picture of where everything else is, and they're in their mind wondering where everything else is. The people at the beginning have to arbitrarily put it wherever. DK at the beginning trended high, you know, Dorki trended high with tanks, and then there are people clearly like Rhett, maybe their power level is not Swamp Ass, right? This is about power level. Maybe one of these people or a few of them are dooming a little bit, right? That's because this should not be what you guys are going off of. This is like, all tier lists should not be gathered for that kind of information. It's not the point. What was good about all this, and why I think it was informative and helpful, was for you guys to hear the people talk about these things in a shorter format, just so people can kind of get caught up to speed.